What's going on? What's going
Hello.
on? Everybody's in the house. Hopefully, everybody had a great weekend. Had a fantastic week. We are back to talk about Christine and the Brown family and the foolishness from the becoming sister wives. I'm James from My Take on Reality, and
I am Jenny from Senior Perspective.
There you go. You guys, hopefully, you guys appreciate that professionalism.
We practiced that for 20 minutes.
Right. Get the timing right, yeah. Ripping off the 5, 6, 7, 8, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Shimmy, chest hands. All right. What's going on? That's the some folks coming in, but before we get started, as always, I want to make sure I thank the moderators who are holding us down. Lizzie B, I got Rochelle J. J Baby has some other things to do tonight, so those are my two. Did you want to thank anybody? Lynn Skinner in the house.
Thank you to Lynn Skinner. Thank you to Lynn Vaughn if you're here as well. Usually the two of you jump on right away. I don't think there's anyone else here right now that's a moderator. So Lynn Skinner's the first one in here. So Lynn always is. She's on top of it. That girl is really like, I so appreciate her. She is, no matter when I live stream, she's there.
I know. Yeah, I got some good folks too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Good team.
Yes.
So and thank you guys all for joining the chat and coming in and joining us as we talk about some of this foolishness, because I know it's gonna be a little crazy. I'm just still trying to hook up my stuff so I can see what's going on. But yeah, it's I have to tell you that reading this to begin with, I was a little at first. I looked at it and I said, it's not a lot of meat on the bone. As far as Christine was talking about. But I will say, as they kind of moved forward with it, it did start to I did see some interesting points. Like, I think there were a lot of things that Christine put in there that she didn't necessarily mean to put in, but there's certain, especially now that we know what happened to the family, there's certain inferences that we can make that either they weren't being 100% honest with the situation, or maybe they just didn't see things the way they should have been seeing things.
Yeah.
So, what was your impression of it? Like, because I know how I felt about it.
I will say that I appreciated the fact that we had a little bit of a timeline coming into this chapter. We had some 1 month later, 2 years after that, and then and I'm like, which as I went back and kind of flipped back to Janelle's chapter, some of it's completely contradictory. So I don't know, like, who's remembering it wrong or who's lying. But I did appreciate there was some of that. And yeah, there was a lot of, how would I say? A lot of, she starts to just get on the brink of really sharing what she's feeling, and then completely backtracks and says how wonderful Cody is and how great he is and what a great relationship they all have. And so she just really falls back into that role that she talks about often as what she was when she was being raised. Just the pacifist, the smile and keep moving on. And yeah, so it was a little frustrating in that way. I managed to, it's not that long of a chapter either, but I did manage to underline a decent amount of stuff in here. Chat about, but yeah, there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone.
Right. Yeah, you know what? Overall, and I'll give kind of the the inverse reaction, because usually I say like the overalls for the end, but overall, my perspective on it was actually kind of I guess it's simple. I think that there's the point in their relationship where Christine was trying to hold on to her family and trying to seal a bond with Cody. So she talks like she kind of big up Cody, like, oh, he's an awesome father and he's so attentive and he's so amazing. And he's doing everything he can and da 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 da. at the same time, we fall back into what I commonly refer to as the polygamy propaganda program, where
Yeah.
everything that happens in polygamy is amazing, and this is just a normal relationship. And not only is this a normal relationship, but they just happen to be, good, gracious, awesome at it, and
Hmm.
amazing at like all relationships. So this is even better than most polygamous relationships. And I think she even says that at the very end. She said that this is like the idea. This is the best of a polygamous family.
Hmm.
Is how she refers to it at the end. So I'm like, but this family wound up breaking up not that
Yeah.
long after you
Yeah.
guys came on. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I wondered if some of that was her, because she didn't do as many digs as the other chapters were getting. I felt like all three of the other wives really threw a lot more digs than Christine did in her chapter. But I wonder if
Mhm.
that was a dig for Robyn. Like, we
Right.
had it so good. We were perfect. Things were great until it wasn't.
You know what? It's weird. I felt like in some of it, Lane Nail was evident. I felt like some of it was actually written by Robyn and Cody for Christine. Like, you know what I mean? Like how it's a weird thing, but how people would describe themselves, like, oh, he's a kind, gentle, this, that, and the other, handsome, and you, the way you would describe yourself, and you would think about it, say, nobody would describe you that way, even if those things were all true.
Mm,
Nobody describes you that way. Oh, he's very patient with the people around. Like, what?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I don't know. It just kind of gave me the little. I had a little bit of the stink eye, like
Yeah.
yeah, give a little
Yeah.
sideways glance.
Yeah, and then that kept happening. There was like that pattern through the whole chapter where it was like, oh, and then some information, and then a little bit of insight, and then boom, but we're wonderful and everything is great. And then we
Right,
go,
right,
it's just this constant cyclical pattern throughout the entire chapter. And it ended with that, we're wonderful. Like,
right.
that's
We're
too bad.
amazing. Don't you
Hmm.
want to do this too? Like that's what I always feel
Exactly.
like they're on the verge of saying. Like, don't you want to try
Yeah.
this too? It's
Yeah.
amazing. You too
Yeah.
could have a 3 or 4 sister wives and basically give your
Yeah.
husband permission to cheat. What could possibly go wrong?
And I wonder if back in the time, if Christine, like especially this time after Robyn came, now pre-Robyn, or we call it BR time period, which is before Robyn, in
Right.
the BR era of Sister Wives, Christine was part of that whole group that went around to try to promote polygamy as this is okay and we're doing it in the right way, and kind of they called it an education, which I'm sure it was, because I know they went to hospitals and all that to explain when a polygamous family comes, this is how they handle it, et cetera, et cetera. But I wonder if by the time she wrote this book, which is a year or two after Robyn came into the family, if it really kind of changed to, I'm trying to defend what I've chosen at this point, as opposed to really, I'm trying to sell it to you. I wonder if it's her trying to sell it to herself, really. But if I just keep
Right.
saying it's great and I just keep saying it's working and I keep saying that, then I will speak it into existence and we will be a great family again, like we once
Hmm.
were in. They never really were, but they did have a well-oiled machine eventually going.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I can see that too, because I think there is always that feeling that because there is a point too where you invest so much into something and you don't want to be wrong, so you try to try to keep impressing upon people that this is a great deal. Like you guys gotta just give it
Mhm.
a little time. I'm telling you, it's amazing. And so, like you said, I think there's that a little bit of that. I'm trying to convince you because I need to convince myself.
Yeah.
Language within text as well.
Mhm.
But like in the first, I'm just clicking through all my junk. In the first paragraph, she went back to talking about like the idealized nature of having sister wives. So it's kind of funny to me that like each one of the OG3s especially talked about like having this idealized version of what they thought sister wives would be. And what was even more funny to me is that two of the three sister wives have experience and grew up in these types of households. So you've been exposed to the negative aspects of sister wives. And if anything, you should be more adept and have a deeper understanding that this is actually a very hard relationship to maintain. But it seems like they were wildly inequipped to deal with a lot of the challenges they made.
Yeah.
Did you kind of come to that same or get that same feeling from it, or was it
Yeah.
just kind of?
And I found it interesting that Christine did reflect and admit she's the only one who's come out and admitted, I saw the troubles before going into it. I was raised in this since I was a kid. I saw women struggle. I saw jealousies. I saw things not work out. I was aware that this happened. And yet I thought, like, maybe mine would be different. Like, I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to have this rosy sunshine relationship with this amazing man, and everything is going to be great.
Right.
So I find it interesting that even knowing it ahead of time, because I really feel like a lot of them were kept in the dark and told it's going to work out. But she really felt like she's the first one that really said that she could see. And then I actually found it interesting too, because at the end of that chapter, when she first starts talking about, like, I've seen all the problems, she did say, I never saw my parents try to work through their differences until it was too late. But I felt like she wasn't being fair with that comment, because I feel like any good parents that are really going through a lot of struggles aren't going to show their kids that they're going through that, because she was just a teenager when they split up. So I feel like until they're in their 20s, you don't really share things you're going through. Like, it would be a little bit more of a surprise. You're not going to watch them fight it out and struggle it out. You try to keep it on the down low and keep things copacetic when the kids are around. So I felt like I don't know that it was their place to have to work through their problems in front of Christine when she was a child. So I felt that sentence was a little unfair to her parents.
Right.
But she did hold it against Annie for a long time.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did. And I think that there's kind of a weird part too, where because there's a couple things baked in that cake. The first thing is, like you said, if you're everybody likes to pretend that they're fair and just. Even I would like to pretend that I'm fair and just. But if you're dealing with the emotional ramifications of a relationship falling apart, you're coming in there with your feelings, and and a lot of the logic is going to go clean out the window. So the idea that you're going to be a good arbiter as to what actually went wrong in the relationship is probably minuscule at best. Like you're not gonna sit there and be like, I was really messing up and I was ignoring your mom. I wasn't paying attention to her. It's always gonna be something that she was doing to justify what you were doing and how you did it, and nobody understands what was actually going on. There's always going to be that kind of baked into the cake. So if you involve your kids in your breakup, this is one of the challenges. A lot of times it can lead to a lot of finger pointing and blame that isn't necessarily beneficial to the child in maintaining their relationship, because we always have to keep in mind that even though we're a family, we each have separate and individual and independent relationships with one another. So, for the kids, if mom and dad don't get along anymore, that doesn't mean just because mom and dad aren't together doesn't mean dad don't love the kids anymore. You know what I mean? Dad just happens to love his secretary. Goes to spend time with his secretary. But it doesn't mean he doesn't love his kids. Because he's broke his promise or broke his, his wife's heart doesn't necessarily mean that he's trying to hurt his children. It can have it can have that effect. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm just saying that it may not be, necessarily the only thing that he's thinking about. So I think that you have that. But then with this particular culture, they do have a way of shunning individuals who want to leave the marriages and unions. So wives who want to separate from the husbands because they aren't having their needs met are viewed and sometimes treated as though they're abandoning the family because they're trying to find peace of mind for themselves, and they get shut out. And I'm kind of curious as to whether that's what happened with Christine's mom. That maybe, because I've always kind of felt that she might have iced her out because that's what you should do. Like that's
Right.
that's what the dance is.
Right. She was supposed to walk the walk of sacred loneliness and appreciate being a sister wife. And
Right.
yeah, I think that is the case. And I think I heard that Christine went quite a while without talking to her at that point. After that, and that's when she became a lot closer with their dad. So I'm glad she saw the other side of it eventually. But it could have been her whole family that did that as well, which may also be why Annie was so emotional at Christine's wedding. That it was sort of a coming back to the beginning. And actually, her mom and dad were both there, in each other's presence, and it was fine. And Christine embraced her mom and let her speak and give a speech. And it just kind of was probably very, very emotional. And also probably emotional for her because she leaves the faith and then Christine chooses the faith afterwards.
Right.
So there was that animosity, not just with you leaving us or breaking up our family, but just the concept of, and now I'm going to choose the thing that you walked away from. And I could see Christine really holding that against Annie for a long time, and for her to now be at Christine's next wedding after she got out of polygamy, I think was probably extremely just heartwarming for her. That whole day she must have been, she was an emotional mess at the rehearsal the night before. Right. So I could only imagine she probably just cried that entire wedding from beginning to end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the kind of cruel part of it is that was the first time that Christine's mom actually was able to participate in any of her ceremonies.
Right.
So, because they had the break, and because she was no longer part of the faith when they did the secret handshake wedding or whatever, the secret ceremony, they weren't able to participate in it. She wasn't able to attend. So she, there's huge swaths of Christine's life that her mom missed out on because she chose her own happiness, which is, it's sad, especially if you look at it from a perspective of where Christine is now. And she essentially followed the same path that her mom did, which is kind of crazy too. Like the parallels between her mom's life and her life, with the exception, of course, of the TV show and maybe being set up a little better financially, but just the breakdown of the family and how the family kind of eroded, and what Cody and Robyn had tried to do to Christine as she was leaving was very similar to what Christine's people were successful at doing to Christine's mom. It's cold-blooded. There was a part that made me giggle where Christina talked about she had dropped some of her puppy weight when she had Truly, or when she had Aspen. She was like, I dropped some of that puppy weight. I was a little chunky, and I had dropped that baby off.
Yeah. I wish I would have lost more weight after my first kid.
Usually it's the opposite effect.
I know. I was a little bit jealous.
The boomerang action. Yeah. But she did make mention that after dropping some weight, her and Meri, I think it was Meri, went out and she saw a dress and she tried it on for poops and scoops. And all of a sudden they were amazed with it. They were talking about how they were struggling with money. And the funny thing to me is that they mentioned several times throughout the chapter, or at least she did, about the struggle of finances and how the finances were as far as the Brown family was concerned. Talking about how money was a bit tight and how she was, my favorite quote of the chapter, financially secure as a group of teenagers.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
So, did you have any thoughts about like the financial end of it that they had brought out during that course?
Well, that story in and of itself just frustrated me because it was another indication of Cody's immaturity, Cody's lack of responsibility, Cody's inability to comprehend finances and the situation, and Cody's impulsivity again. Oh, I really like it. You look so good in that. Yeah, let's get it. $100 for what was it? A skirt? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
white something. I think it was a white dress or a white skirt.
White fringe skirt or white fringe dress. I mean, that
Mhm.
would still be expensive to me these days. I'm a thrift shopper
Right,
myself.
right,
So I can
right.
only imagine back then and how poor they were that that was an okay thing to do. Where's she gonna wear this? Are you all going out to dinner? You shouldn't be. You know,
Right,
I was
right,
just like, is this for your next vacation? Shouldn't take one. Like, come on, people. Let's start building up the bank account. Let's be fiscally responsible. And it just frustrates me to read that kind of stuff because I can't relate to it. I wasn't
right,
raised that
right,
way. I don't live that way. I didn't raise my kids that way. And so when I read that, I just like want to shake the book like I'm shaking them and say, like that doesn't put food on the table now that you have $100 outfit that you'll probably wear
right.
twice.
And the weird part is that at this time, one of the things that really stuck out to me was that at this time, they were new parents. So
Mhm.
you're relatively young parents, and I understand how young folks think, especially when they don't have strong financial education. If it,
Yeah.
people have kids, I always recommend them talk to your kids about money. Like you talk to them about everything else. You talk to them about sex. You talk to them about drugs. But a lot of times the money conversation falls through the cracks. Talk to your kids about money, how to
Mhm.
manage money, how to do credit, how credit works. All that. Like how to save a dollar. If you don't have like my big thing was always like especially with the acceleration, just kind of get off topic a little bit, but just with the
Mhm.
acceleration of the availability of credit cards, the ability to use your debit card, things of that nature. Just always keep it in mind that if you don't have it, you can't afford it.
Yep.
So if you don't have the money in the bank to buy something, then save up to get it. There's nothing wrong with you taking a few moments to get it. I'm gonna tell an embarrassing story. Story time.
More time.
Story time. This is an embarrassing story. It's all embarrassing. When I was a kid, I worked. My grandfather owned a store. I worked in his store and stuff. I owned a convenience store. My grandparents were entrepreneurs of sorts, and
Mhm.
they had a lot of stuff going on. But when I was in early high school, I got a job at my local church, my parish. I grew up Catholic, so got a job at the parish, and I worked in a rectory, right where the priest lived.
Mhm.
And I answered phones, answered the door, did schedules for weddings and all that, set up for church on Sunday. And I made $1.50 an hour.
Mm.
$1.50. Illegal. Illegal. I made $1.50 an hour. I worked maybe like 2 nights a week at 3 hours. And then I worked 4 hours on a weekend, like maybe
Mm.
Saturday or Sunday, depending. And so literally I would get a check at the end of like we got paid monthly. I would get a check at the end of the month. And some of my checks were like 70, $80. I think like
Mm.
a big check was like $100 if I went crazy. I
Mhm.
worked a lot of hours. Now, eventually I got promoted. I think I was only there for a little while, got promoted. Then I was making $2. But
Mm.
when I bought a video game, at that time it was a Nintendo. I had to save up for like 2 months to
Mhm.
get that damn game. And it amazes me, and the game was only like 79.99, right?
Mhm.
But kids will go out and spend $500-$600 on a credit card
Mm.
to get a gaming system now and
Yeah.
not think anything about it. What all you really have to do is wait 2 months, 3 months, put money aside, and you can just go ahead and pay that thing off with cash money, walk out the door. But it's
Mhm.
just trying to teach your kids a little bit of patience. That's one of the things that I'm
Mm.
constantly talking to them about. And I don't. We'll see if it's going to be successful because everybody goes through that. Has to go through it at their own pace. But
Yeah.
Like, just have those conversations. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, $2 an hour.
100%. 100%. My mother made us save 50% of our checks. And it was $3.30 an hour, I think was minimum wage at the time. I worked, I think, 10 hours a week at the library. And I remember thinking it came time to go to church, and you had the envelopes back then. Everyone had the envelopes you could write your name on. You know, they had your coded with like your number or something on it. And I was trying to figure out like my tithing, because you were supposed to tithe, you know, they were like, oh, you should tithe on your gross income. I remember thinking like I didn't even have $1. And so it was embarrassing to have my envelope go clink, 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 clink. I just kept going, God, you'll multiply this if I give you the $1, because I'm giving you more than a normal tithe here. That's all I got.
Right.
Because it's the same thing. You made us save up. If you want to go with your Spanish class to Spain in your 3rd year, 4th year, whenever it was, you'll pay for it. You want a prom dress?
Right.
You'll pay for it. So like at $3.35 an hour, and half of that is gone because that saving wasn't for that. That was for like when you go to college, I guess. I needed it in high school, but
right.
But I mean, I will say it instilled in us the understanding of saving money and always making sure you've got that rainy day fund there. This is a concept that the Brown family doesn't comprehend or understand at all.
Right. And that's one of the things, like, I guess that maybe just to go down a rabbit hole a little deeper, that's one of the things that I started talking to my daughter about, especially as she's starting to get older. You know, there's going to come times when you want to have money set aside. Like, start yourself a little vacation fund, a little fun money fund, where if you have a friend come to you and say, hey, let's go on spring break, or hey, let's go here, let's go there, you have the money put aside that you don't have to go touch a credit card. You don't have to go see if you can put some things together. If you want to go, you have it to go. If you don't want to go, your money, just keep stacking your money. You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's the difference. There's a comparison I used a little while ago. You know, the problem is that there are too many people who would rather walk around with a $5,000 bag with that little receipt paper in the $5,000 Gucci or whatever bag, as opposed to walking around with $5,000 in a cash money in a paper bag. I'd rather have that $5,000 in a paper bag than worry about a lot of the fancier things. You know, my mom always encouraged, like, don't worry about buying like cars and stuff. Get brick and mortar. If you have money before you go buy cars and like spend all your money on new cars, get yourself a house. You know, those kind of things. So always have those types of discussions. And it's not necessarily in everybody's purview to go out and run out and buy houses. That's not what I'm saying. But it's just that thinking. Like, if you are looking at like this particular case where you have $100 and you're saying that we're trying to figure out how to put food on the table for our kids, $100 purchase for a dress might not be the best investment.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Might not be the best investment.
Yeah. And there was no special occasion attached to it. It wasn't like a vacation dress because they were redoing their honeymoon, or it wasn't a wedding dress or a special. It was just because it was cute. And they said she looked cute. And I'm like, if you keep looking, I bet you $100 you'll find something else cute, and maybe it'll only cost you $20. Just keep looking. Right. Don't stop because the first thing you put on was cute. It's like, oh, that's cute. Yeah, we're just going to buy it. I mean, that's like $1,000 to most people, $100 to them back then. It's unfathomable to me.
Just unrealistic. And then there was an old, like, wives' tale. I don't necessarily support this or endorse it, but you take your credit card, you put it in a block of ice, put it in the freezer. And when you want something and you want to use the credit card to get it, you have to take the block of ice out of the freezer and thaw it out. And then normally, by the time you get to the point where it's thawed out that you can actually use it, you realize that you probably didn't want the thing that you were willing to do it anyway. And that was like something that they had said before. But it's just like the mentality is there. And sometimes you just gotta take a step back. And let's be honest, like Cody wanted her to have the dress, and she was probably excited about the dress because she lost a little bit of weight, was looking good, feeling good. Cody
Mhm.
was attracted to her, and that was a way for him to kind of woo her and be able to take a good look at her. But I mean, it is what it is. Hell,
Yeah,
take a
and
picture. Forget the
what
damn
Cody didn't realize, right? Take a photo, take a look at her every day. Then
dress.
it'll never go old. And what he didn't realize is what would have gone a lot further than taking $100 out of their family's account for this dress she'll wear a couple of times is if he would have told her how amazing she looks, if he would have told her how proud he is of her for being such a great mom and for, and he can see the
Mhm.
energy she has now and he can see how she runs around with the kids and she's just the greatest mom. If those kind of affirmations to Christine or to anybody really are going to go so much further than, yeah, throw it on my plastic. You look good on that,
Right,
like he could just say, you look amazing in that, let's find something else amazing. And if we don't, we'll come back and get it. Or, like
right, right.
just, I don't know. I don't
Or
know.
do
It
we
just
need it?
seems so frivolous and ridiculous.
And Carol Davis with the what thinks about the interest they charge is crazy. Like the interest they have on most credit cards,
Crazy.
especially if you're not getting a really good rate on a card. Like
Hmm.
they can be up to like 30. So I think I think they've even surpassed in some jurisdictions even over 30% now. Like you can get a credit card that's higher than 30%.
Yeah,
Like
it's crazy.
I think I heard that somewhere that they passed because before you couldn't have a credit card. The reason why they would only charge you 29.99 was because you couldn't go over 30% for a credit card. But I think
Mm.
they repealed that. So I mean,
Which is
credit cards
insane
should not.
because your interest rate you're getting at the bank now is pittance,
Yeah, yeah. You take a personal loan, and
Yeah.
then you realize like I'm filling out all this paperwork so I can buy a dress. Do I need the dress? Yeah,
Right.
for this
Right.
personal loan. Oh
Crazy.
man. But yeah, what did you think about like the she talked about the housing situation or living situation. And this, like you said, there was a point where at least with Janelle and Meri, it was very ambiguous as to when they lived where and what the configurations of the houses were and who like what the roster was in the house as far as who stayed where at what time. And then in this it talks about like Christine says the house was cramped with four adults and three children in diapers. Cody was miserable at work while we tried our best to work on all our relationships with one another and learn how to raise our children. Our close
Mhm.
living situation made tempers rise. Cody decided we needed a change. We needed to get out of Powell. So
Mhm.
we moved from a 1,000 square foot house, which is not it's not a huge house.
Mhm.
It's a nice. I mean, it could be a reasonable house. It's a reasonable house, certainly for a single family, not for what
Not
they
for
do.
their family. Yeah.
Yeah, in Wyoming to a 3,000 square foot house in Utah. And I think that's the house in Lehigh that they were talking about. And she
Mhm.
just, what kind of tripped me out, they were talking about everybody having their own kitchens and then working out a little better. But
Mhm.
the thing that kind of tripped me out was she described it as Cody made the decision that he was going to get this new house. Whereas we just learned in the previous chapter that Janelle, Cody had called Janelle up and said, "Hey, I found this new house," which to
Mhm.
me says that he needed Janelle to get the house. He needed her to join in to get the house with
Yeah.
him.
And that
Did
timeline
you
was a
have a
little
thought?
bit off too, because with Janelle, she said that they moved to Utah without her and that it took her a year to come around. And that's when
Mhm.
Cody said, we found this other house. And she said,
Right.
okay, I'll come there. But it just doesn't make sense because they, when you add those times up based on the fact they had the kids already, when they moved into the house, both Christine and Janelle had another child, but it said it was only their second child. And I'm like, well, they said both of them said they moved around a lot. you know, and sometimes Meri was in a place, sometimes Janelle had her place, sometimes Christine had her place, and there were all these movings that was happening. And then Cody said, which is another discrepancy in the book, Cody said, according to Janelle, I got this great job and we have this great house. And they originally moved to Utah because he had this great job. And then we read in Christine's chapter, he eventually found a job after they got to Utah.
Right.
And so I'm like, that's not what Meri said. I'm believing Christine on this one because she was there. He just moved them because he's Cody and he's constantly just moving everybody, and he has ants in his pants. And then eventually found the job. But so the timeline, and I think maybe just Janelle, hers must be the one that's inaccurate. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. It could be, and it could be a combination of the two. But in hers, she presents it as she had a difficult time when they all moved back in together with the three, when Christine came back and they were all in there and it was crazy. And so they had a big fight and she left. And then she eventually took the kids with her. And then she said she moved in with her mom, but she got another job and she went back to college and she bought a house. Like, these are major time periods. Whereas Christine said they moved to Utah and had the second child. Well, they're not that far apart in age, are they? Logan and McKelty and Madison, they're only a year apart. So it's very confusing to me. How did Janelle do all that up there? And then a year later have a baby? Like, I don't know. I don't know. And maybe she was just talking in generalizations, but that got me a little frustrated in this chapter because I was, one, thrilled that Christine was giving some actual timelines. But when you just put the paragraph of things Janelle said happened, it just doesn't, they don't line up. So I don't know. Or maybe it was Robyn's editing if she really did edit it.
That sounds good. Like she just forgot what she had wrote.
Well, just blame it all on Robyn. That's the easiest thing.
And it's just weird to me that, like I said, like I think that, and this is one of the parts that I was talking about where Christine is giving a lot, or at least lending a lot of credit to Cody for putting the family back together. Like, this is one of the first steps she took where she says that we had this issue as a family. Cody came in, he fixed the issue that we were having as a family, and now we're all back together, and as we are family. So, like, again, this is one of those things where Cody is doing everything she did. So, in a weird way, maybe you touched on something because she leaves out a lot. Christine does. Maybe it was Robyn who wrote and edited this part of it, where she just kind of says, yeah, they lived in a small place. And then all of a sudden, Cody decided he wanted to move to a bigger place so that each one of the wives could be happier because it was a little rocky with them living in such a small place. And in a weird way, I guess that also gives credence to later on when Robyn goes and buys those big houses for herself. You know, because we got to have those big, nice houses because that's the way Cody likes to live. It's not me, it's him. So I don't know. Like I don't know. Sometimes you just, you know, when you do stuff like this, you're just kind of too smart by half. You wind up having like that. You kind of backing yourself up into the wrong situation. One of the things I did find interesting in this chapter, though, was the relationship as described by Christine between Christine and Meri. Because the relationship that she says that they had, you absolutely, or at least I didn't get from watching the show. Like she said, they were, you know, two peas in a pod. They were like best friends. They would go out. They would travel together. They go shopping together. They were always, you know, talking and seeking each other out for company. And then all of a sudden, boom, you know. So what did you think about like that relationship?
That I wrote down too. She gave a timeline on that. Let me see here. Let's see. Moved to Utah. Brings back, yes. 1 year before. Okay. 1 year before her pregnancy with Truly, she had the
Right.
big fight with Meri. So a year before the pregnancy with Truly, Robyn wouldn't have been in the picture yet because she was
No.
pregnant with Truly at the time that she met her and then eventually had her after they were married. So I thought, okay, so then this all happened. None of it was on. This was all before Sister Wives. That's another
Right.
BR, another before Robyn. So the fact that the two of them were gal pals until that big fight. It's nice to have a timeline for when that big fight. I'd like to know when Janelle's and Meri's big fight was too, because Janelle said she had a big blowout fight too. I don't know if we have that. I'm not sure if I wrote it down. I feel like if she would have said it, Janelle didn't have a lot of dates at all in her
No.
section. So yeah, so I thought, okay, what I took away from that is that, okay, the two of them palled around a lot. Janelle was busy working and she was more reserved, and Christine had a different kind of relationship with her. It was still good, but it was different. But her buddy was Meri, and the two of them would be goofy and silly and hang out. And it probably was tapering off because Christine admitted that this was a long time coming, this big fight. She just had been trained her whole life to not be confrontational. She didn't enjoy confrontation, and she would just let it go and just keep smiling until she just couldn't. And then all of it came out at one time, which was really the end of their relationship at that point. So if that happens 1 year before the pregnancy of Truly, and then it's pretty frosty and cold, they go about 6 months and Meri's realizing, ooh, this is not getting repaired. And then meet Robyn. And that's right around the
Right.
time the whole courting and the let's meet her, let's run into her, let's have her, come up and down. It really bodes even more for the fact that possibly Meri was in on it too. Or Cody's
Mhm.
just that smart, which is hard to believe he's smart, but he is manipulative and conniving. So, and this falls under
Very.
that realm that he knew Meri was so hurt at this point, and he knows about this Robyn girl that she would be easy to manipulate. He was probably constantly putting in her ear, it's not right how they don't include you. You're the number one wife in our family. I don't understand why they're
Right.
acting like this. You should have somebody too. That's the problem with threes always. One's always left out. And he's probably planting all these seeds until the miraculous run-in with Robyn that Meri
Right.
now
Right.
thinks was all her idea. But I can see how that fight was what originally I thought it was after Robyn came for some reason. And maybe it's because of the argument that Meri had with the boys, yelling at the boys about how they treated Robyn's kids. So maybe that like
Right.
kind of messed with my timeline in my head or something like that. But yeah, I found it very interesting, and it made me go, okay, yeah, another confirmation as to why Meri would be bringing Robyn into the family, because she was just so lonely. And we know from earlier on in the book that Meri wanted nothing more than to have girlfriends. She wanted gal
Right.
pals. She got it. She became a polygamist so she could have friends. She always wanted to have friends. She loved how she acquired friends by just marrying Cody. It was important for her. That's her validation, is I need to have friends around me, and then I've made it in life. It's something she struggled attaining throughout her younger years and even through her teens, until she had a couple non polygamous friends there. So I'm like, okay, all right. Then the big fight happens, and Christine gets pregnant with Truly, and then all of a sudden, here comes Robyn into the picture. It all fits
Right.
in that regard.
Right. Right. And I'll peel the onion a little bit with my speculation.
Okay.
I think that Meri, because of the way the families are formulated, especially within this culture, the importance of having a child, not only to be a wife, but to have a child and to be a childbearer, is the most important thing you can do.
Mm.
And Meri's position within the family is being challenged, because there was even a point where I think Christine early on said that she felt that her position was being challenged because everybody was having kids and she didn't have a child when Janelle had Logan. She felt like
Mhm.
she wasn't there, and she was challenged. Meri the same way. She had been trying for 3 years. She didn't have any children. All of a sudden, Janelle turns up pregnant with Logan, and then here comes Christine with Aspen, and then she finally gets pregnant with McKelty. So, or with Leon. So we have that entire thing, and I think that part of her struggle is that if she's sitting back, she's watching these women get pregnant after pregnant after pregnancy, and she's sitting there feeling like, what am I doing that I can't have the life that I want? And how do I maintain my power and control in a family where so much of who you are and your value to the family relies upon your ability to have children?
Yeah.
And I think that that creates automatically, that would create conflict in that situation. And quiet as is kept, I can also see a scenario where, and this isn't necessarily a shot on marriage, just a reality check on these types of situations where you can have jealousy. Jealousy doesn't stop with a woman spending time with your husband, but could also uh, enter into the field of childbearing and child rearing. You're
Yeah.
watching this woman have multiple children, and you're jealous of that situation. And instead of you taking it out, even on yourself, you take it out on these children. And that
Mhm.
very well could have been why she was having such a difficult time with Christine's kids. Like she said that, I think Christina revealed that Meri was kind of going overboard with the punishments, you
Mm.
know, and
Yeah.
that could also be because they aren't her kids. So, like, you
Right.
ever notice like people who talk about children, like, oh, you gotta knock that kid out, blah blah blah, you know, beat that child, whatever. A lot of times they say that because that's not their child. It's easy to say like how much you should punish a child is not yours,
Yeah.
but you take that same person with their child and
Mhm.
they're acting up or talking back in the store. They're not doing half the stuff they talk about you should be doing to your child when your
Mm.
child act up. You know what I mean? So I think that
Mhm.
that kind of plays into it too.
You know what? There's also a piece that I've never heard anyone talk about, and that's that Meri was working at this center for at-risk kids. All right. So I don't know the details of it or the actual place, but if if it's truly just at-risk kids, or was it a center for kids with behavioral problems? Because if it's a
Mm,
center for kids with because I've heard other people hypothesize that Meri knew Robyn because they thought that Dayton actually went there. That like so there's different facets to the school that that like maybe that there was not that he was a behavior problem at all, but like there could have been also a section. I worked one of my first jobs after becoming a speech therapist. I worked for a place down in Virginia that took all of the severely autistic kids and behavior problem kids into a specialized program. And sometimes they were
right,
special classrooms in the school, and sometimes it was a site that they went to and they worked with them. But I'm telling you, my training included how to take down a kid, how to restrain a kid, how to, it was all of this. And it was all
mm,
in the sense of protecting yourself, like you
right,
use these in extreme measures. But I remember going through the training at the beginning going, what have I gotten myself into?
right, right.
Where am I? What is my day going to look like from day to day? I was like so stressed, but I'm wondering if maybe she worked in an environment where rules were very strict. Kids had to follow a protocol that was very strict because their tendencies were to always stray off and do the wrong thing, and they had a rigid schedule, et cetera, et cetera. And when they misbehaved, they were yelled at or disciplined or however they did it. And of course, back then things were different than they are now.
Right,
Punishments were more severe, even in public school settings and in people's homes as well. Things no one can get away with the spankings we received and all that. Like that's
right,
like
right.
all passe now.
Corporal punishment,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, but I can understand if maybe on the day-to-day basis, she was seeing this kind of discipline and it was coming from an educational perspective. I'm just hypothesizing here. I don't know because I don't
right.
know what the school entailed, but I like kind of took my personal experience and wondered if she was working with kids who are so tricky like this and they're not succeeding in the public school environment, and so they needed a more restrictive environment and with more rules and guidelines to help them be successful, could it be that she then generalized and thought, this is how you treat all kids? And she wasn't
Right.
able to individualize well, first of all, just realize none of that is applicable in her home. She didn't need to use any of those strategies. She could have used just the basic ones of positive reinforcement and, all that, the other things that I'm sure that, all those centers use as well. She maybe just went to the extreme because she could, and she didn't have, there's just certain personality. I don't know how to put this, but there's a few people I know like this in my life who are certain personalities who just really enjoy being in control and having that level of authority, but they don't have any position like that in life. So it ends up becoming the kids that receive that kind of, and I can just see that in Meri. I can see her as being somebody who really wants to, show who's boss and, put it in place. And she does that in a way by keeping her home very neat and very clean and things in order. And this goes in this cupboard and laundry's done this way. And so she has that kind of control over her environment. But then when it came to the kids, she did the same kind of thing. Cause I just sort of think I don't want to say there's joy in it, but it's just almost like a need for them to have this authority to be able to give directions. And that could be why her and Janelle never got along either, because she was always given directions and having that authority over Janelle and was never able to figure out how to communicate with her as a equal peer. I don't know. I'm just shooting off the cuff here, but it made me, it made me think about her. And as I was thinking back, I don't even think it was in this chapter. I think it was before I started reading this chapter that I started going, I wonder if Meri had that kind of experience. And that's why she loved that job so much, because she was the authority figure who was always like, oh, my say is the final say, and you'll do what I say, because that's how it works here. And that's why she, thrived in that environment and loved her job so much. And then when that went away too, then she also had to fill that gap somehow.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that there's also a point where you can say, because Meri had worked with what she had described as at-risk youth. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if the children had special needs, which would put her in direct proximity to somebody possibly with Dayton, because Dayton would be classified as an individual with special needs. Special needs doesn't necessarily mean severe learning disabilities. It could be somebody who just has mild, like whether speech impediments or you having trouble reading, dyslexia, autisms, like even whether it's Asperger's or even some of the different parts of the spectrum. But in a sense that if she's dealing with kids who maybe have juvenile issues, delinquency issues, that could put you in a space where, and again, I have no proof for this, and this is just merely me speaking into the void, that could put you in a position where you're trying to prevent your kids from turning into the kids that you see every day, because that does have a way of impacting you. Like for instance, my mother, she worked for a school district. Like she worked in the school district. And one of the most important things for me and my brother growing up was that we had coats. Like that was her thing. Every year we would go out buy one or two new coats because she would see kids within the school district that she worked. And the kids would come to school. It'd be freezing cold out. This back in the day before it was like all this climate shit started happening. We actually had seasons. But it'd be cold in like September. You wear your coat on the way to school first day. But that would bother her to no end. Like, so she always made sure that we had coats, like no matter what. And that was like just one thing. So I can see a scenario where, something goes on and you don't want your kids to suffer from this thing and you try to prevent that. And that would be a positive spin on maybe why Meri was so strong, especially with the discipline. One of the
Mhm.
other interpretations that kind of struck me too was that sometimes um, parents who let their kids get away with a lot of stuff don't like their kids to be corrected. So it's
Mhm.
I'm like looking at it. I'm not quite sure where Meri and Christine and even Janelle would fall in that spectrum because
Mhm.
sometimes like your kids can be there, they're bad as hell, and as soon as one of the adults say like, look, you need to get your kids, they running around in here, about to break my ceramic, figurines or whatever. You need to tell them to calm down because I have stuff in there that can get broke. Man, why are you trying to restrict my child? Why are you trying to tell my kid what to do? He young, he free. Like, no, he don't need to be free at my house. He can be free at your house.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure. I don't know, but I do see there is like portions of people who don't have control in their own lives trying to assert control. This is actually one of the things that you see in some domestic situations
Yeah.
where people will go to work and they get talked to crazy by their boss, and they
Mhm.
come home and take their frustrations, their work frustrations, out on a person who's in the house who they feel that they can take advantage of, or they can assert their authority of their way of taking back their power.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I mean that does happen, and whether it's a spouse or a child, that is a thing too. So I don't know. It's kind of curious. Uh, let me
Yeah.
see
Hard to
here.
say. I do know there's also a little bit of immaturity involved there too. I remember working in an amusement park when I was 16 years old and having the stick
Mhm.
and the ability to tell line jumpers to get out of the line, and like the it went to my head real quick. I mean, before that I was working at a library. I was just shelving books. It was like, and then all of a sudden you're the one that decides how many people go through in there. You're the one that if you see someone jump, because they had strict rules at this park, no line jumping, you can't even get out of line to go to the bathroom. Like, you get out, you're
Mhm.
done. And so I was the one that was there being able to say no. And I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world until I realized, like, halfway through the summer, I didn't like who I became. Like, it
Right.
just really changed who I was. And I'm like, I don't think this is fun for them or me anymore. I'm going to change. But, it started off being immature and receiving that level of authority and just salivating for it, like, ooh, I'm the one in charge, I get to hold the striped stick, people are going to do whatever I
Right.
say, and just running with it and think it was the greatest thing. So I wonder if part of it, because she clearly has always been immature. She just
Right.
socially, had a hard time growing up. And so I just wonder if that, is another component to it. I don't think that's the reason, but I wonder, like, all these things that we're talking about could all be working together, sort of creating the perfect storm. And what worked with it too is the fact that Christine let it go so long without her speaking up. So it's her fault as much
Right.
as it is Mary's.
Yeah, you feel it. Well, I think there was an experiment that was done. I think it was in the '70s at Stanford University. It was the prisoner. They had students, and they did an experiment with the students. They
Yes.
had one group they made prison guards, and the
Mm-hmm.
other ones they made prisoners. And
Mm-hmm.
they had like little controls, and then all of a sudden, what they noticed was, all of a sudden, these kids who were on the same plane, the kids who were the prisoners started becoming hyper aggressive and hyper controlling to the point of inflicting like brutality
Mm-hmm.
on their peers and the other students who are portraying themselves as prisoners. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like what they talked about is like when you're given that much power, kind of what you were
Mm-hmm.
saying, you're given that
Mm-hmm.
much power. All of a sudden, you just like, I drink it of the power, the gauntlet of power, and you think you're the one. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I actually with that study, if I remember correctly, I think they had to stop it
I
because
think
it
they
was
did.
just getting
Yeah. I
so
think
far
they
out of
eventually
hand.
had to intervene, which is part of you're not supposed to ever do in a study, but they got to the
Right.
point of, like, they're abusing each other. Like, we
Right.
have
It
to
started
put an
getting
end to it. And I
dangerous.
think that was the end of the study. Like, the whole experiment just ended at that point. And I think
Right.
I remember hearing too that after it ended and they told them it was, no more, and that they were still in those roles. Like they couldn't get out of the. It's a Lord of the Flies situation.
Right.
It's just put them in this environment, and somebody's going to rise to the top, and the other ones are going to and they couldn't get the. It was a while and a lot of therapy that they went through.
Right.
Before they could get over that. Could you imagine if your kid was involved? Oh, how horrible would that be?
Yeah. But I think that actually is a point too, because like when you talk about like the conditioning, I still got to do that video. I don't know how much, I got to arrange my schedule better, but there's a point where you come into how you start these relationships is how you kind of get trapped in these relationships, because how you start is how you finish. That's what a guy told me when I was a kid. But when Christine came in, she came in as a people pleaser as well. Somebody who's like trying to make everything move along and not trying to create any waves, not trying to create any problems. She wants to be the peacemaker. And you have somebody who maybe is or isn't like Meri, but somebody who, I guess fits this hypothetical that I'll put forward. And if they are super aggressive with the kids, and you have another person who isn't the mama bear, isn't ready to go to war to protect their children, but just wants to create a atmosphere or an environment of peace, they will allow certain things to happen. And as those things happen, you start to fit into a role, kind of like those prisoners and those students who you had the guards and the prisoners, and they start to fit into those roles. And one of the things that my dad had always told me is that when you start off a relationship a certain way, and you allow somebody to mistreat you, it stops being a thing where you're allowing them to mistreat you, and it starts to become a thing where they own that mistreatment. They get to treat you that way because they are who they are. And in order for you to correct it, when you do try to correct it, now you're taking something from them. Like, this is my right to treat you any way I want to, and you're telling me that I can't do the thing that I want to do. That's my right to do it because they feel entitled to it. And that creates a problem, which could eventually lead to a situation where, like Christine had described, and this is what I thought about, like she describes, where you have that you let it go for so long, you let it go for so long, you let it go for so long. And the minute you want to stop it, now it takes a hard correction in order for you to turn that ship around, in order for it to stop. It's not just a conversation, hey, I don't like how you treat me. It's, F you, B. And if you come around with kids again, I'll burn this house. Like, it'd be some crazy stuff. Like, you got to go all the way to the left in order to get any recognition for your position change. Yeah. So, I mean, I thought that kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah.
What did you think?
You know what? Let me say something funny about that, actually. On 138, Christine is talking about Logan was born, and in his first year, they all had different roles. And she said, Meri had constructive discipline. Janelle had a safe and comfortable place for him. And Christine said her role was happiness and joy. She played with him. And I read that and I thought, what constructive discipline do you give to a child who's under 1 year of age? There's no discipline for them. They're babies.
He was wearing a little bow tie.
Yeah, I wondered, was that a dig too? Because what on earth? And it wouldn't matter what kind of discipline. That baby's not going to understand. It's like it's his reflexes that it's working through. It's like crying to try to communicate. It's like everything it does, it has a purpose and an intent, and you shouldn't try to stop it. I just thought that was funny. So I had to go back and look. I'm like, did she really mean? And then I'm like, yep, it said Logan's first year.
You gonna keep pooping yourself? Is that what we doing?
Right.
Like little baby.
You are down
just
to
gonna fill your diaper up,
3 diapers a day. That's all you get. You're going to sit in it if you do it again.
You're right. Well, actually, one of the ironic parts about it is if you really think about it, if you do that, like if she were to get nailed on any of this stuff, especially with the job that she had, you won't be able to do that job anymore.
Yeah.
Like, so it's kind of it's a serious thing. Like if you get caught disabusing any children, and you work with children,
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like
Yeah.
it's a full on rap, especially now. Like they do the background checks and stuff. You can't even coach a baseball league, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and without doing a
Mm-hmm.
background check
Yeah.
because the world is so crazy. Well, I won't even say, you know, it's weird to me. Sidetrack. I won't even say that the world is so crazy because I always hear that, like, oh, the world is so much crazier than it was before, and the way things are now. I don't necessarily think the world is crazier. I just think people are more aware of what
Mm.
happens in the world. Like we're not. This was always going on. There was always, you know, folks running around with short eyes, as we used to call it back in the day. You
Sure.
know, people running around with short eyes, and it's just that now parents are more aware that
Yeah.
there are people out there like that, like the guy
Mm-hmm.
who's coaching the little league, like, you know, don't have any kids, but you just want to be around the kids all the time. Like, whoa, 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 you know what I mean? You get looked at different. So I think it's always been around.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. I was talking to somebody about that not that long ago either, when they were saying that none of this happened back in the day. I'm like, it happened. We didn't know about it. Like, unless
Mm-hmm.
they got caught, you didn't know about the different situations and all these things that, just randomly when things got caught, if it got on your local news, that was one thing. But now with social media, everything
Right.
is out there. And I think a lot of people protected people back in the, I think there was a lot of protection of pastors and protection of teachers and protection of police
Mm-hmm.
officers and like protection of people in authority if they did do something wrong. It's like, oh well, let's give them a pass because they're doing a good thing.
Right.
And
Right.
so now it's brought out to the surface more so that people are aware, like, okay, we're all humans. There's bad seeds everywhere across the
Right.
board where you
Right.
didn't think anyone in those higher professions did anything wrong. I had a
Yeah. You know
girlfriend
what?
tell me once, she came over to my house, and we were just having like a small get together, and I knew her somewhat through my kids' preschool. Um, and I really enjoyed her. And she was new to the area, so I kind of tried to befriend her a little bit too, because she had no family in the area. Her husband got transferred. And so she was over the one day, and I made the comment to her of, I don't even know how it came up, but I made the comment that I would feel comfortable leaving my kids with her at her house. And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Why would you do that?" And she goes, "You don't know me well enough." And I'm like, "I think I got a good beat on you in that." And she's like, "I think that you need to screw." I was just like, "What?" But she's like, "You need to be careful and scrutinize. You don't know what's going on. You don't trust somebody like me. You don't know me well enough." And then I started thinking, like, every time she came over, she did have her little cooler of beer.
Right. Right. Right.
And I'm like, she might be drinking from sun up to sundown. And I started putting two and two together. And I'm like, well, maybe this isn't just because we're socially getting together. Like, maybe this is just who she is. And she can't make
Right.
it for
Right.
these 4 hours where we're together without having alcohol. And she wasn't sure if it was going to be provided when she came over. So she had her stash there. But it was eye-opening because it makes you think, yeah, like that was like the beginning, and my kids were very young, they were only preschool age at the time. And I remember thinking, yeah, I probably should be more. We kind of were pretty Pollyanna-ish. Our parents were, and I mean, we were dropped off wherever. Like, we walked
Right.
in areas that were safe or not safe. It didn't matter. It was just when the street lights came on, you come home.
Right.
And,
Right.
and now it's a
Yeah. They
different
let you go
time.
out.
Yeah, even in safe
Well,
neighborhoods, you're like, well, who's going to be there and who's going to be watching? And yeah.
right. Right. Well, I think that it's because I think there was a point too where, out of respect for the individuals who uh may have perpetrated certain crimes, but I think that there was also a sense of security. I'd heard a long time ago, actually when I was in college, one of my professors. He said, security is essentially the warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you turn that key in your door. That's all security is. Because if you think about it, like even thinking about my home, like I have like the big, thick doors and the double doors and all that, and big, strong doors. But then, like maybe a few feet over, I have big, huge picture windows. Like so, you're really about a rock away from entry into my house. Like you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
my doors,
Yeah.
my security is just based on your inability to break a window. Or, we got plenty of rocks because the guy next to me has like the pond rocks. he has that decorating his little front, his areas or whatever, his beds. And
Mhm.
so you can walk down the street, get some pine rocks, come on back up, and bust all my windows out. No fuss,
Mhm.
no muss, but it's that warm, fuzzy feeling you have. And when we were talking about a lot of the things and we were discovering that a lot of this stuff was going on, that you can't trust all your neighbors, you can't trust people with your kids who you
Mhm.
don't intimately know. And even then, when you do know them, you still got to ask questions and pop up on their ass,
Mhm.
make sure they're doing the right thing.
Mhm.
It made you feel unsafe. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where we are now, because I think we're at that very tumultuous time where we went from complete ignorance, the bliss of ignorance, to awareness. And now we're trying to find a happy medium between uh,
Mhm.
being okay with the world the way it is, or at least being knowledgeable with okay with our knowledge of the world is the way it is, and being able to negotiate it in a way that doesn't make us paranoid as
Yeah.
we deal with one another.
Yeah.
So I think that that's kind of one of the weird things. A little sidetrack, a
Yeah.
little sidetrack, but I think it's interesting. I think it was interesting.
I think so too.
Um, so we talked about like Cody finding that job, and then of course we heard about, and this is one of the things that kind of tripped me out too. We had heard about the Cody trips. Uh, Earlier on, Janelle had talked about when Cody would go away for work, he would take a wife with him, and the wife he chose was Meri. And when Meri would go, all of a sudden it was like, we going on our second honeymoon. Enjoy your time, third wheel wife. And they would leave Janelle by herself. And there was one time she got to go when she was pregnant, and then they were
Mhm.
taking Meri, and Meri and her got an argument. Well, this
Mhm.
time it's funny to me because Cody talks about he found a job that he truly enjoyed. This is what Christine had to say. Cody
Mhm.
found a job he truly enjoyed, attended trade shows. These were the gun shows. Like this is the
Yeah.
part where he wasn't talking about it, and they were very secretive about it. But he attended trade shows 2 weeks in Illinois. What really brought us together and made us more functional is that not long after we moved to Utah, Cody finally found a job he enjoyed. Cody's new position required him to attend trade shows, one of which was in Illinois. Excuse me. This trip would require him to be on the road for 2 weeks, towing his trailer with his materials and displays. Uh, Both Meri and Janelle had been on trips with Cody, but I never had the opportunity. That's him not spreading these trips out even, right?
Mhm.
He's not a good steward as far as spreading these trips. When Cody asked me to go, I was over the moon. He could have taken anyone, and he took me.
Mhm.
I suddenly felt special again, and that's crazy as hell to me. This trip was a huge turning point in our relationship. Um, the trip car overheated, and he talked about asking McKelty. So he's had children and he's had kids with her for a while. So he's on like what is McKelty's her second child, right?
Yes.
Yeah, McKelty's her second child. So
The
she has
second one.
two kids with him. This is the first time she's
Mhm.
going on a trip, which is crazy as hell. Talk about how they broke down numerous times and all that. Uh, And they said she describes it as we'll get into, I guess, into more detail of it later on. But she described it as like this trip had brought them closer together because at that moment she realized that Cody really cared for her and that they were so close.
Mhm.
Uh, what did you think about that?
Well, stepping back for a second, here's another
Mm,
controversy with just that whole job situation. Because Janelle said in her chapter that Cody contacted her and said, I got a job that's going to keep me close to home, so we're moving to Utah. That's why we're
right,
moving there. And now the job involves 2 weeks away at trade show, like taking things to trade. How is this not involve any travel? She even
right.
said he found a job for which he wouldn't have to travel. He would be home with the kids every night. And then we get into Christine's chapter, and she's like, well, he continues to do all these trips, and now he's going to be at a trade show and on the road for 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Right.
It's one thing to like have a travel job where you're not home every night, but you're maybe gone you leave on Monday and you come back on Wednesday or something like that. But the 2-week job. So that's something that stuck out when I was reading it too. Cause I'm like, the contradictions in this book are making me get a headache. I'm like, who's right? Or is there more jobs involved here? I wouldn't put it past him. He had a job that involved more travel, and he got her to move there, and like within a year he decided can't do it, and he found another job. And then that was the trade job. And they just don't bother mentioning all the jobs because one, it makes them look bad, and two, like, why bother? It's Cody's always getting a new job, just like he's always moving to a new house kind of situation. So, yeah. Okay. What was the question?
Well, because I think that like, because even with the jobs, like, because there could be a point where the discrepancy could come in with us trying to piece together the timeline, and it could also be relative. Like, so you might be dealing with a situation where Janelle thinks the job is better because he's not going away every week and only home for 2 days. But since he only goes away maybe 2 weeks out of the month, it's not that bad. So I like it's still very ambiguous as far as like what is actually going on and what's not going on. But I think that the interesting part that I was referring to was like the closeness in their relationship and how long it took them to develop that
Get
closeness.
there. Yeah, 2
You know what I
babies
mean?
in.
That's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
2 kids in, and then all of a sudden, like, yeah, I finally felt like we were actually doing something together. What? You guys been
Which
married
is
for how many years? 2 kids?
right. And the crazy part of that is at the very beginning, in the very first chapter, we have Christine saying, I realized I, married a man I didn't know, but I loved him. And I'm like, and it
Right.
was so confusing to me. I'm like, well, how? How is that possible if you really don't know him at all, that you love him? Are we confusing the words love with lust and with attraction or something like that? And how did you not know him when you knew him for years and you were going to dances and he was coming to your house because your father was the head of the church, or you were hosting things at your home? You were going and staying at his farm for over periods of time. So another confusing period that I was trying to like make sense of. And I'm like, how is this even possible that you didn't know him?
Right.
And then if that's true, you didn't know them, how can you say, but I loved him the whole time? Or did you just throw that in there because it was the right thing to do? But yeah, this trip and being the very first time, and the trip was miserable. And this is when she really realized she fell in love with him, was during this absolutely miserable trip where the car was breaking down, the air conditioning wasn't working, it was so hot. She got 2 babies in the backseat. Can you imagine? They had to have been crying and fussy and, put them in a car for that period of time in that kind of warmth, and kids are going to be just miserable. And yet you couldn't wipe the smile from her face because she was with Cody. It shows you how little he gave her in the relationship, that all she needed to do was just be in a car with him. And it didn't even matter that there were 2 kids in tow that were probably demanding a lot of her time and attention away from him. She was in the same car with him, and it was going to be for this period of time. And it ended up being, to her, a honeymoon trip.
Right. Well, I think part of it too is just the fact that like it's the first time he took her.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're not used to doing something, it seems like it's, oh my goodness, it's amazing. They took me in. It was, we had like hot dogs on the side of the road while we were waiting for the tow truck. Oh, we just got together. It was amazing. But she doesn't, and this is kind of that weird spot where kind of what you intonated earlier is that if you don't know what a strong relationship looks like, then you don't understand that you're not necessarily in a good relationship. So if he's paying you the minimum attention, you feel like he's giving you tons and tons of attention and he's paying attention to you and meeting all your needs, but you don't realize that you're just basically getting a bare bones minimum, if that, in a relationship. and
Mhm.
you're not being like your needs aren't being met. It's just that maybe he's better than your boyfriend was, like your previous
Mhm.
boyfriend who was a complete asshat. Like
Right.
so, you know,
And
yeah, I
she
think
had
that there might be
to,
some of that at play.
yeah, she was catering to him as well as catering to the kid. So she's putting on this happy smile and all that because she's trying to keep him. And then she got happy when she realized it was working. He was, like,
Right,
at the point that
right.
he would have a little smile when he looked over at her, and she's like, "Okay, all right, I got this. It's 108 degrees, and the car keeps breaking down, and the kids are screaming in the back, but I'm making sure that Cody is happy." That's like
Yeah,
her
yeah.
whole goal, and and it probably did bring her a lot of joy and satisfaction because that's really her mission is to make him happy so that he'll then love her in return.
Right, right. Well, what's weird too is that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is that you're successful. Like the
Mm,
biggest L you can take is that you win.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
by that, I just mean that when she does that and she pretends like everything is great, everything is wonderful, she makes this perfect little world and this perfect little bubble for him in
Mhm.
this space at this time so that he'll enjoy spending time with her and they can develop this type of relationship. The reality of it is that in that type of relationship, he's not in love with you. He's
Mhm.
in love with the image that you portray, and
Mm.
he's in love with this fictitious fantasy world that you created. But he doesn't love you in the true sense of knowing, because he doesn't even, in some cases, in this type of situation, they don't even know who you are. They just
Mhm.
know who you pretend to be.
Mhm.
And by doing that, it's doable at first for short periods of time. This is why I think Robyn was so successful, honestly, because it's doable in short bursts of time, but it's completely unattainable and unsustainable over
Mhm.
long periods of time. Like,
Yeah.
so if he's coming by every day for you to create that wonderful world, it will drive you to sadness, depression. It could lead to hopelessness. It could lead to you feeling insecure in yourself in your relationship, starting to ask questions that aren't
Mhm.
necessarily going to help you out in a relationship. So I can see a lot of the problems that were kind of brewing and how the groundwork had already been laid out for some of the things that we'll talk about a bit. Well, one of the weird things to me is that at the end of the trip, he said the sacred covenant. Like I wrote this as the header for this one passage because we had heard about the sacred covenant
Mm.
between Cody and Robyn when she came into the family. My sacred covenant that I gave to you. That
Mhm.
I would never be with you if I don't want you. And this statement that he made to her kind of reminded me of that sacred covenant, where he said,
Mhm.
where she says, at the end of the trip, we turned to each other and said, I know that I can trust you to be an amazing and incredible person for the rest of our lives together. I
Mm.
know that I will always be there for you and do everything possible to make things better for you. This
Mm.
was our commitment to each other.
Mm.
So the fact that they were saying that, they had this commitment to each other that they would always be there for one another, they would always uh uh you know try to be good to one another, and then to watch what happens in subsequent seasons as the show kind of devolved and as their
Mhm.
relationship dissolved and devolved was kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, it did to me too. I'm like, "Oh, that didn't age well, that paragraph."
No, no, not
I
at all.
wonder at what point and that paragraph also, I was wondering if it was a little bit of rewriting history as her looking back on it. Like,
Hmm.
did they really come out and say that, or did like one of them say? I really like to know
Right.
exactly how it went down. But and maybe it just was exactly as she said it. It's hard to say. There's a few quotes that she actually puts in the book that are confusing to me as quotes. There was earlier on when she was still in Wyoming and her friend from Utah just called her on the phone and said, where are you?" And she's like, I'm in Wyoming. Why? And she's like, no, I mean, like, where are you right now in your life? And I'm like reading this going, and she said, you seem lost. Like, what makes her in Utah think that Christine is lost in Wyoming? There's no social media. There's no, like, this is a different
Right.
time. There was no way for her to know what was happening in Wyoming, for her to say, you seem lost. And then Christine went on to explain it. So I'm like, I just found that part really interesting because Christine was put it in quotes. And from my experience, I only put things in quotes if it's literally the words that came out of somebody's mouth. So I
Right.
don't know if that was just her taking a freedom license. I wrote in the margin, this is random. Because it just
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
came out of nowhere. And then she said, oh, I told her that, I didn't feel worthy and I felt insecure. And then she told me, you're the same girl. And I'm like, what? Why are we talking about this? Where did this
Right.
come from?
Right.
Who's this person? And what in green earth made her from another state call you and say, you seem out of it? So because of that, I was now skeptical of the rest of the quotes that were in the
Mm-hmm.
chapter, because I'm like, maybe it happened like that. And she's just leaving out a lot of information that
Right.
we don't
Right.
know about. But we, like, well, I talked to your mom and she said this, and, like, so this is, putting two and two
Yeah.
together, but it was either just written really poorly, or she was just kind of embellishing a little bit and deciding to put it in quotes rather than say, and then she kind of said this, and I said this, and she said this. Like, I'll just put it as dialogue. I'm not sure. So when I was reading that next section, I was just, now I'm like, now I'm questioning everything.
Well, it
I'm
could
like, did
be.
they say
I think it might actually be from like because Christine kind of strikes me as a I guess there's no real soft way to say this. Like she strikes me as a person who will be vocal, and some people might refer to that as a complainer. Like so,
Mm-hmm.
she might very well have called like feeling that she wasn't getting what she needed from the relationship from Cody, especially with how he does things, because it seems like there's a lot of avoidance as far as dealing with issues or problems that may arise. Like he finds a way to kind of, you deal with it, and I want to go ahead and hit the road. This is part of the reason why I think he liked those sales jobs so much because it gave him a way to be out of the house. And
Yeah.
then when they started getting separate houses, he likes that separation because that gives him a way for him to go to one wife's house when he's having problems with the other wives.
Yeah.
So, in lacking that connection, I can see Christine maybe calling friends, family, and complaining about her situation, and maybe the friend saying like, "Look, what's going on? You're the same person you were. You're special. You don't need to be putting up with." Like, I guess too, they
Mhm.
depending on your friend group, some friends may call you up and say, you don't need to put up with this. Other friends may call and say, you can't leave, but you can deal with it. So it's kind of, But
Yeah.
big shout out to Teresa Skinner who gave us a super sticker.
Yay, Teresa Skinner. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Teresa Skinner in the house says, you are amazing. The sticker. Thank you so much, Teresa. I appreciate you. But yeah, so with that, I thought it was a little you know, like the way she did it, like, because I agree, like, she did have a few points where it was incongruous
hmm
with what she was saying. So one minute she's saying everything was great, next minute she's saying things are terrible. One minute
Yeah.
she says she's so deeply in love with Cody and it's amazing. Next minute she got people calling her from out of state, like, girl, you need to get out of there. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Turn your life around, turn your life over. So
hmm
this kind of chapter was a little bit all over the place. A little bit.
Yeah.
Um Then there was well, yeah, I guess we talked about like the adjustment that Meri had with the reconfigurement, argument she had with Meri, talking about the discipline with the kids.
hmm
Um, but there was a point where she did talk about Robyn entering into the family.
Mm.
Uh, that I thought was interesting. She said after her fight with Meri, I realized that the only people I'd ever let in were my mother and Cody. My mother broke my heart by divorcing my father and leaving our faith. about a year after the argument, we met Robyn, and even though I welcomed her into the family, it shook my foundation and left me unsure of whether I could trust Cody's commitment to our marriage.
Mm.
And I thought that was a good timeline basis for when Robyn came into the family versus when she was having all the problems with Meri. So she had
Mhm.
problems with Meri about a year from the time that she had problems with Meri. Robyn comes into the family or is introduced into the family.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is a vulnerability where, you know, you could look at Meri and say, you need to get a friend because Christine and Janelle are getting kind of close. You don't want it to be a situation where it's 2-on-1. You'll be getting run over. And especially dealing with somebody who enjoys their position of power and control.
Mm.
For them to feel like they're being isolated or iced out would create a problem for them.
Mhm.
Did you have any thoughts on that? Like the whole thing with Robyn coming into the family as mentioned or introduced by Christine?
Um, yes. What was I just
Well, it might help, like with the because I in the next instance, I also said like polygamy is hard, and I think that kind of flows into it maybe where you were at.
Mhm.
It says growing up polygamous, I'd watch other women go through the experience of getting new sister wives. I never understood their jealous reactions
Yeah.
whenever they complained about the domestic upheaval caused by a new wife. I wanted to tell them it's all part of the principle. You just you're just being a baby or
Mm.
feeling jealous is a choice. You are choosing to be jealous. Get over yourself. I should have listened to my own counsel. I
Mm.
didn't understand how hard it could be. And that's kind of where I was going with the whole Robyn thing. So I kind of left that part out, a little dangling participle. But what are your thoughts on that?
It made me sad that the kind of pressure that she put on herself. It was also
Hmm.
sad to think these were all the mantras that were in her head before she ever had kids. So this is everything she heard growing up. Like,
Right.
this is you just need to buck up and get over it and stop being jealous and all that stuff. So when she would see people, she felt like just telling them all that, like, come on, get it together. Until she was in the situation herself. It made me real sad. It also made me a little bit frustrated in that as she's having these realizations that she's now in the shoes of the people that she was kind of judging before, that she she took it as, oh, I need to listen to my younger self. My younger self
Hmm.
is still right in this situation. I need to buck up and just forget about it and get over the jealousy and everything, as opposed to saying, oh, now I understand. Since I'm in the position, my younger self was not accurate, and the people that were telling me those things were not accurate. Those are that comes from people who don't know, or people who are just trying to keep you to stay in the faith no matter what.
Right.
It's not really helpful to her in that situation. It made me very sad. And then it also kind of coincided with, I think, her going through that period of time afterwards where she was just like a doer, 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 doer. She was
Hmm.
on this board and that board and teaching and full response to the house and organizing the parties. And it was just like this incredible amount of stuff that I'm like, who would ever take all of that on? But I think part of it was her finding her value in that. There were probably the more she
Right.
did, the more Cody recognized her and thanked her or acknowledged her for what she did until she eventually broke down and just couldn't do it anymore. Yeah, there were a few parts here that made me a little sad. The beginning of the whole section there at the top of 144 too is that whole BR time period, the before Robyn time period. And it was listening to her reflect on it for many years. I felt that our lives were perfect. I loved being part of the family. I loved homeschooling the kids and taking care of the household. I received all the benefits that I expected from a plural marriage. So she did have that sweet spot that I referred to. You know, there was like the rocky years at the beginning, trying to figure it all in. They kind of got in their groove, in their rhythm. Maybe because it was so bad before, it was perceived as being so perfect and idyllic during that time. But for whatever reason, it seemed to be working and people seemed to be happy. And then boom, there's the fight, and then there's Robyn. And then everything exploded from that point on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because I think that there's also a point too where like I used to say all the time, I wish I knew half of what I thought I knew at when I was a young man at 18, 19, 16, 17, 18. I
Mm-hmm.
wish I actually knew half of what I thought I knew and what I was
Yeah.
so sure of back then. Because
Yeah.
then I'd probably be one of the smartest people on the planet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
'Cause when you're that
Mm-hmm.
young, you're like so sure of yourself. Like it's such an
Yeah.
insane ego trip. And
Yeah.
it amazed me how she took the positions where she said it's all part of the principle. You're just being a baby. Feeling
Mm-hmm.
jealous is a choice. Like, and these are all things that, ironically, um, one of the more devastating things of institutional oppression is that after a while of being a part of that or subject to that, you start to take the traits of the people who are oppressing you.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing. Like, you, at that point, you can once you've captured their minds, you've taken their minds, you can release their bodies because they'll not only adhere to the rules and regulations of the institutions themselves and apply it to themselves, but they will enforce those rules with other people. And I think that that's an example of what we see here with Christine, because the things that she's saying, these are things that I could see some of the leaders of the church saying, standing in front of the congregation or I don't know if they call it congregation or whatever, the church group, and saying these things. Like, if you're a young lady and you're married and you feel jealous, jealous is a choice. Stop
Mm-hmm.
being a baby, put on your big girl panties, and deal with your feelings so that you can improve the family. Like, this is something they would say because they need you to do that. And by being a part of that and subject to it, she not only takes it in and tries to apply it to herself, but I'm sure that when her mother was talking about getting divorced, this is something that she would have said or thought about her mom. Why are you divorcing my dad? You need, being jealous. You're just doing that because you're upset and jealous about the choices that he's made as far as being with another woman. You need to choose to stop being jealous and start putting the family ahead of yourself and your personal feelings. Like,
Yeah.
these are things that are said, and this is what created that. I think created that divide between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes it even worse for me is that, like you said, when she looks back on this, instead of saying, you know what, I had a good reason as to why I felt the way I felt. Instead of feeling that way, she says to herself, I wish I would have listened to my younger self and sucked it up and stopped
Mm-hmm.
being jealous and understood that it was important that as the family, this is something we must go through. Like, what are you talking about? Come on, man. So I think that was jacked up.
Yeah, I
But
didn't I didn't like that at all. It made me uncomfortable to
no,
even read that she put that in print. You know, it's interesting too because she mentions that when BR again before Robyn, like right before this chapter, she was saying like prior to this, everybody had their roles for almost 16 years. Again, she calls it bliss. Um, and over that time, there were minor discussions of potential courtships, but nothing came of it. And then that's when Robyn came up. But what I found interesting is her pointing out everybody had their roles at that time in the family. And I, it made me just think and ponder and wonder, what is Robyn's function? What is Robyn's role? There isn't one. So no
mm,
wonder it upset the apple cart when she came into the family. Everyone served a
right,
purpose in their family. and then there was just like this appendage that got added to the family that didn't have a function and didn't have a role and was taking up your time and taking up your resources and affecting you emotionally. Like, it was just a drain. It was a complete drain on their family structure. And she didn't address it, but after her talking about it like that, that's what it made me think of. I never really thought of the fact she really never did work into any role ever, to the very end.
Well, actually, I would say this. I think that Robyn did work her way into a role. It's just that it was a position that none of the other wives was willing to accept. Robyn's, like Christine's role was taking care of the children and
Mm-hmm.
events. Janelle's role was supporting the family financially. Meri's role was essentially to keep the other sister wives in line. She was the enforcer. Robyn's role was to take care of Cody.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that the other wives really saw her as having a role because they thought that they had a role in helping to take care of Cody. But her, like, even when she came into the family, her main function throughout her time within the Brown family has always been taking care, maintaining her relationship with Cody and keeping Cody happy. That's part of the reason why I think Cody likes and enjoys spending so much time over at her house, because everything that she has going on is suited towards his needs, desires, and happiness, personal happiness. So he gets, like, at least during the time when he had the sister wives, that's what made that time so special for him, because he could go over there and he could spend time with her. And that's why he enjoyed that time with her that much, because she was the one that was taking care. I think Janelle's mom had actually said that. His mom had said that about her relationship with his father. She said, my job was taking care of the household and the kids and family. And Janelle's mom's job was taking care of Cody's father. And that's what I think Robyn decided she was going to do.
The problem with that, though, is there was never a consensus she would take that role. The other roles, the other wives all agreed on, and they all fell into, and they all loved that each one had that role, and they all found their thing that they liked doing. I don't think any of them wanted Robyn to take this new additional role. Because I think in their minds, that's not a role. We're all doing that equally. We're all, we're all feeding into that. Yeah, don't take away some of the things that I enjoy doing.
Right. And I think that that's part of the problem. And to be honest with you, I think that that's, for me, that's always been one of the foundational, fundamental problems with polygamy, is that when you're engaging in these types of relationships, because it is such a dynamic group or dynamic relationship, because you have so many different moving parts, you can't account for the wishes and desires of each person. So there's no point where you have a true meeting of the minds, especially with this particular group, because they're horrible with communication. Like, they don't talk about things. They just assume that everybody will kind of go along with the thing or perceive the thing the way they perceive the thing. So when you talk about, like, I agree with you that I think that none of them agreed that Robyn was going to come in and take, control or stewardship of Cody. If you ask them, they would say, we're all equal women. We all give, in fact, they said that we all give like different things to Cody because we all have different independent relationships with him, and they're all different, and he has to keep and maintain it. Meri has said on several occasions that Cody has to come back and romance her and treat her like a woman and a desirable partner and all that. She's had that whole, story arc. But there is a point where you can say, in the bare bones of this type of relationship, Cody doesn't have to do any of that. He's not required. Like, I've never seen, like, I've heard them talk about it, but I've never seen anybody on the guy's side say that it's a man's responsibility to make sure that his wife's emotional needs are being met. They've never said that. They just say that the wives have a choice to come into the family, which is completely different. And so I think that Robyn came in, and when I say that she came in and she started took the role of being Cody's caretaker, I think that's a role she usurped. Like, I think she came in and she took that role. she took that
Mm-hmm.
position, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what created a lot of the. When you talk about upending the apple cart, I think that's what caused a lot of the problems. Is
Yeah.
because the wives were naturally trying to resist against it, but one of the built-in arguments that you have is something that Christine said. Because the moment she starts to rebel against Robyn coming in and doing these things and taking care of Cody, and Cody wants Robyn to do these things, and Christine rebels against it, Cody can turn right around to her and say any one of these sentences that she just laid out. You know,
Yeah.
jealousy is a choice. You
Yeah.
have to be better. What did they say? You know, marriage is a calling, but polygamy is a higher calling.
Mm-hmm.
You have to live up to that standard. So when
Mm-hmm.
Robyn is doing all this, well, I'm sitting at Robyn's house, 6 days out of the week, and you three other women have to figure out what I'm gonna do on Sunday. That's y'all problem. You guys got to stop being jealous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why I
Yeah.
say like it's the bounds and the constraints and restraints of the institutional oppression that they're part of that
Yeah.
gives rise to somebody being able to come in and do that to them. And that's what
Yeah.
what kind of jacked me up.
I think it took
But
them by
that's real. Okay.
surprise too, because I do believe that the OG3 were all team players. And
Hmm.
Robyn didn't come in as a team player. She had an
Right.
agenda and she fulfilled that agenda. And essentially, she became just a parasite. She just hooked onto
Right.
the host and sucked the life dry of them money, sex, whatever. Like she just took it all and provided nothing to the rest of the family, just the Cody. And okay, we could
Right.
say if Cody's happy, then the rest of the family's happy too. But we see over the years that ended up not happening. Like long term, that
Right.
didn't work. Like short term,
Right.
maybe. Well, Cody's happy, so let's just go with it. Or maybe it was bad from the beginning because the wives are now seeing what a good mood Cody's in and they're actually getting bitter about it because they're like,
Right.
well,
Right.
it's his time with her over there. It's putting him in such a good mood. How come I can't get him in a good mood like that? I don't know.
Right. He's
The
always
whole
wondering
thing
how
is
they're
just
smiling.
crazy. Yes.
Well, because I think that that's one of the things that because even as like I'm not trying to say that they did it wrong or whatever the case would be. I will say this. I think that when you look at it, I look at it from a perspective of I like to see equitable treatment amongst all partners. I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine that when you're engaged in this type of relationship, you want to make sure that everybody is having their needs met.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, this is one of those conversations that you really should have with your partner or
Mm-hmm.
partners before you engage in this because not everybody is going to see it the way you see it. Because
Right.
you could make the argument who did it right? Did Christine, Janelle, and Meri do it right because they were looking out for the bigger family, contiguous family? Or did Robyn do it right, who came in and she was just merely looking out for herself and
Mm-hmm.
trying to fight for her scraps to make sure that her kids were provided for? And so I think that you could make arguments either way. Like in one case, you kind of yeah a lousy person, but you could make arguments either way that
Yeah, that's true.
maybe Robyn was doing it right or she was playing the game right. It's just that the other women weren't
Yeah.
because apparently and the messed up. And I say all that just to say that, like, because if you look at it, and this is one of the things that really jacked me up. If you look at it, Robyn came in, did all she was doing, and Janelle played the game how I thought the game should be played.
Mm.
You contribute to the family, you give to the family, and the family you take care of the family because the family is going to take care of you. But
Mm.
Robyn came in and she played a different game, and she
Yeah.
was looking out for herself, and that's how she wound up with property at Coyote Pass. That's how she wound up with a $2 million house. That's how she wound up with, a husband who is basically at her house all the time. So, it's just like part of me is like I'm conflicted because I'm like it's not fair, but at the same time, did they ever agree to it? Is this
Yeah.
something that he openly agreed to, or did the rules change as they were going along?
Yeah.
Um,
At the very
but yeah,
beginning, when they were bringing her in, Christine mentions a whole bunch about how she feels bad for Robyn because she feels like she misled Robyn because she was so nice. She was putting her best foot forward. She was being all sweet. She's always making sure everything was perfect. There was plenty of food, that we had this wonderful family and that they were showing her. She was excited about courting her at first. Well, not courting her. She was excited about the prospect of her being in their marriage until the courting began. And it was when the courting and the marriage happened that she was no longer sweet to her. And she said she felt guilty. And I found this a real interesting sentence. She said, I felt guilty for offering something to Robyn I couldn't provide. I felt as if I lied to her. So it was her basically saying she was never going to be able to provide that acceptance to Robyn from the beginning. So I found that really interesting. She didn't just say, oh, I acted like this and then I was really mean and that wasn't right. I'm sorry. She said, I felt guilty for offering something that I couldn't provide, which I thought, wow, that's pretty deep when you really think about it. She didn't like say it was all okay. She's like felt bad. Like, I'm sorry I lured you in. I was never going to like you. I was never going to accept you. I didn't want you to be a part of this at all. And so I shouldn't have pretended like I was going to.
Yeah,
Oh.
but I mean, I think that's also like closer to like some of the stuff you see in Seeking Sister Wives, where you have people who will agree to something that they obviously don't agree with, and they're going along with stuff that they obviously don't want to go along with. Christine was not okay with Robyn coming into the family because even in the polygamy propaganda style of everything was perfect before Robyn came in, you had a situation where she didn't get along with Meri.
Right.
So Christine didn't get along with Meri. Meri didn't get along with Janelle. Janelle was always working. Christine was at the house being Susie homemaker, and Cody was on the road, every now and again trying to figure it out. So, even though she tries to paint it as everything was great before Robyn came into the family, your family was still fractured before Robyn showed up. It's just that Robyn came in and took advantage of the weakness that existed within your family structure. She exploited it. And I think that when it comes to Robyn, the messed up part about it is actually something that I wanted to talk about next, if you wouldn't mind. But it's the whole idea of the postpartum and dealing with like a mental condition that she was going through at the time. Because I think that also plays a heavy part of it. Because just the one segment I pulled out was Cody and Robyn's. This is from Christine. Cody and Robyn's courtship came at a time of huge personal upheaval. I was pregnant with Truly, and we had also entered into a new and uncharted territory. Excuse me. As we began filming Sister Wives for TLC, when Robyn started courting and then married Cody, it really rocked me. I gave birth to Truly, and I was suffering from extreme postpartum depression. I never thought I'd feel such a sense of loss and such crippling jealousy. I thought that I was better and stronger than that. I really did. And that hit me because she's suffering from essentially a chemical imbalance. And it's not a choice. It's not like she decided that this is how I'm going to feel. I'm choosing to be jealous. I'm choosing to be petty. I'm choosing to be small. I'm choosing to not make her feel welcome in the family. This is something that she went through. And the part that really bothered me was the reality or the possible reality. I can't say reality because I'm not sure that this actually happened. But just from what I'm getting from the pages, is that this is something that she went through alone. Like, and for you to, and they often talked about when you have these big families, you'll never be alone and you'll never be lonely. You can be in a room full of people. You can be in a house full of family members and be alone. And if you're going through these things by yourself, this can create all kinds of problems, not just for your interpersonal relationships with your, spouses, significant others, whatever the case may be, family members, etc. But this can create problems for you as a person because you're unstable as far as where you are and where you fit in. But I'll open the floor. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts on it?
That was a devastating thing to read. Very devastating. And I do want to point out the very beginning part of that you read coincides with Janelle's chapter in saying that Cody and Robyn's courtship came at the time of the pregnancy with Truly and entering into the TLC contract. Because Janelle was saying the same thing too. These all happened at the same time. And I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me correctly, Robyn may have a different recollection of that timeline. But yeah, and we talked a little bit about this last time and the postpartum stuff, but I even stopped underlining in this. Like I started underlining at the beginning because when I was reading it, it just takes me back. It just makes me realize what she went through. I started reminiscing and thinking about what could it have been like for her to be filming during this period of time. Because you didn't see that on camera at all. The amount of energy that she would have had to draw upon had to have been exhausting to make herself look happy and normal and all that. And those cameras shoot for a long time too, to be able to do all that and then to not have it be recognized what she was going. Now the kids recognized it. They talk about it a lot. So I'm guessing that her older girls were probably her support predominantly during that time. But I just, right after she shares that too, she shares, I was certain beyond a shadow of a doubt that marrying Robyn was the right thing to do. I recognized immediately what an awesome, special, and wonderful person she was. She belonged in our lives. And I just wrote fake words in the comment. I'm like, we're circling back again. We're going to talk about how incredibly intense this was, but she doesn't really say intense. She just sort of like skims over and says, oh, and by the way, I was suffering from severe postpartum depression, and you have a baby to take care of, and you've got 5 other children to take care of, and you're the main provider of education and caregiving and cooking and everything else for the family. And now we have cameras in here, and you are feeling like just crawling up in a hole and just getting up and putting pajamas on seems like climbing Mount Everest. And somehow she pulled it off. My respect for her after reading this section went to a whole nother level. And I just pray that she did have support from Janelle, or it wasn't going to come from Cody, and it wasn't going to come from Robyn or Meri. So I guess from Janelle by default. I hope Janelle was able to provide her with at least some sisterly companionship and support and whatever she needed during that time. And I'm sure like I said, her older girls were there as well.
Well, because there's two things that I would say. First thing is that with regard to her filming and being a part of the bigger thing, I think that some of what we witnessed on the show was actually we kind of took it from a perspective, or at least I did. I can't speak for we as a big group, but we as a monolith, right? But me, when I watched it, I was like, wow, Christine has always been there, kind of voicing her opinion, kind of saying what's what, and telling people what she thinks. This could have been a direct result of where she was as far as how she was feeling with her, with dealing with her issues as far as undergoing like the whole issue of postpartum depression. The second thing, it kind of pointed out with McKelty, because McKelty and Tony had episode of their Patreon where they talked specifically about Christine's position on Cody picking out the dress, and then her flipping out saying, yeah, that's real nice that you picked out the dress. You didn't care what I was wearing when it was time for me to get married. And she, walked off, and she was really angry. They had to stop filming for the day. And I think they didn't come back for another week because the whole girl was so pissed. But Tony came down on Christine, but neither one of them mentioned the fact that at the time of filming, when she was that upset, she was in the midst of suffering from postpartum depression. Yeah. And so when you have your husband, you already feel unattractive, you feel low, you feel tired, you feel beat up, you feel like the world is against you. And then all of a sudden, you have the person who's supposed to be supporting you and the
Yeah.
person who you're in a relationship with, and you already have questions as to whether your relationship is as strong as it should be, only to find out that this person is deceiving you and
Mm.
going out behind your back and doing something.
Mhm.
Yeah. And this is one of those like, yeah, this is why she was angry. I understood, even aside from the postpartum part, I understood why she would be pissed. But if she was actually going through the hormonal throes of postpartum depression and she found that out, dude, you lucky she didn't flip that couch over with you on it. Like,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Because the hormones make you strong,
She
Jack.
was
Maybe it's
justified in
strong.
flipping a couch in that situation.
Right?
Absolutely.
It could have been problems. We could have been smoking in the city. They might have had to get 4 or 5 of them big ass beef eating bodyguards to come out and try to pull her off of Cody and Robyn.
Yeah.
Like it could have gone there, but it's just the idea that so much of what we see, it
Yeah.
always just kind of always reverts back to this is your problem and you need to fix it. This is
Mhm.
something you're going on, and uh, you're not justified in feeling the way you feel and going through the things that you're going through. And I think that's one of the struggles that at least I have as I watch Sister Wives. That a lot of times that conflict I find myself in because there's always somebody sitting there telling them that they're wrong for being jealous or upset, that they're being mistreated. Like they're
Yeah.
being treated poorly, and somebody's saying, "Yeah, you ought to get over it." What? That's not
Yeah.
a get over it moment,
Yeah.
you know.
I remember when I was suffering through postpartum, and it was just my second child. And my husband would come home and like take a look at me and go, okay, you want to go for a walk around the block? Or like, like he could just
Right.
like, I didn't say a word. Like he could just see on me that like I am struggling to make it to the next minute at this given point. And
Mm,
it became the point that he would call me from work and say, what do you want me to bring home for dinner? It wasn't
right.
ever, like, what are we having? Or do you want me to, like, because then I'd
Right.
feel
Right.
guilty and say, no, I'll make something, I'll put it together.
I
But
better
there
have
was
a
this,
hot one when I show
yes,
up.
yeah, there was this period of time where he would call and be like, what do you
Right.
want me to
Right.
pick
Right.
up on the way home? And I just think about that situation and think that here's the opposite. She's cooking for everybody and doing
Right.
everything,
Right.
and she has essentially no husband there to
Right.
help her
It's
at
still
all.
expected to do parties. Still
Mhm.
expected to take care of kids and
Mhm.
homework. Still expected to
Mhm.
make sure that all the house stuff is done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to put
Shit going
on
down.
decent clothes and makeup and hair and be camera ready and to sit on that couch for however long and answer these questions and hash things up, knowing TLC is going to hash up emotional stuff for them. Like, I don't know how she did it, quite frankly. I don't know how
Right.
she did it.
Right. Yeah. It's wild. It's wild. Oh, big shout out to Teresa Skinner.
Yay,
Another
Teresa Skinner.
super chat.
Again, Teresa
That
Skinner.
super
Look at you.
sticker.
You're such a generous
All
cat.
right.
Thank you,
Good. Thank you
Teresa.
so much, Teresa. Appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but it's just like I said, it's just a weird place because you see like a lot of the struggles that they went through, and for them to pretend that it's normal, and then like you said, with
Mm-hmm.
the added pressures of doing a TV show and presenting yourself a certain way, and
Yeah.
then the additional pressure of not only do you have to present yourself a certain way, but you feel
Mm-hmm.
like you're like the spokesperson for polygamy, so you have to present polygamy in a positive
Mm-hmm.
image, and then at the same time, your husband is off with these women. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that kind of really got me, and this is like one of the last points that I had. Unless you had some other stuff that you wanted to talk about, but it was talking about like the polygamy propaganda program. I listed it as that, and it talks about Christine says, although Cody is a stronger man than he's ever been and grows more and more reliable every day, I feel a lack of stability in our own relationship. I can only blame myself and my insecurities for this. I will get through this only when I've strengthened my relationship with God. This is that secret loneliness that they be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
She has to
Mm-hmm.
strengthen her relationship with God because she's not getting along with Cody because, he's doing everything he's supposed to be doing, but she's screwing up.
Mm-hmm.
This will return my confidence to me. Then all of my jealousy will vanish and everything will fall into place. How did that turn out? Like, it's just insanity. It's insanity.
It is
Because,
insanity.
I kept falling back to the whole idea of her pretending. Like, there's that point where I think she even said it in season 18, that she was at a point where she would always pretend to be a person. And that's what this strikes me as. This is her trying to pretend that everything is fine and that all she has to do is fix this one thing and her whole life will turn around and it'll adjust itself. It'll set in perfectly. And I think that that's what creates the whole problem, the very problem for her and for the entire family. If they could be honest, not just about how they're feeling, but with what they're going through, what their actual positions are with things. If you have a problem with something, say you have a problem with it. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't bottle it up and don't cover it up. Say you have a problem with it and then deal with it as it leads. And I think that might have actually saved them.
That would have been the answer. You're absolutely right. That would have been the answer to saving this family. If they would have been able to communicate with each other and actually share what they were thinking and feeling along the way, they wouldn't have ended up where they did end up. I don't think. Right. I mean, who knows? And what's being said behind closed doors and all that, which kind of goes in line at the very end. She says, he has made this, she's talking about Cody and how he's starting to make this amazing emotional transition. This kind of harkens back to the many references earlier in the book that Cody's immature and he needs to learn to grow up, or now he's starting to grow up and we're starting to see him take responsibility. And so there's another one of that now where he started taking over some of the family responsibilities that she always did. And she said, although he gets overwhelmed quicker than I do, he has learned to listen and take our needs and problems into consideration and then apply them to the overall picture before, he makes his overall decision. And what I thought was interesting about that is that we're like, 15, 16 years in here at this point. And what has made him start to grow up in her terms, or start to take a responsibility and all that. I wonder if at the introduction of Robyn at this time, it was Robyn always talking in his ear for him to reclaim his position as the patriarchy. And so at first, as he's starting to take responsibility, as they see it, Christine's like, whew, I'm doing everything. So I'm so grateful that he's starting to handle it. But it just kept, I think, escalating and escalating. And then he started verbalizing how this is a patriarchy and the women need to fall in line and all that. And I really think Robyn was the beginning of talking in his ear, telling him, this is your role and I support you in this role. So you need to claim it back because the women are doing too much right now. And that also could be what somebody could argue was the beginning of the end for their family dynamic too.
Right. And I think that actually touches on something I was saying before, like with regard to Robyn's interpretation of the rules of the family or the rules of engagement with the family. And this is like, again, like this kind of thing has to be talked about. So it's not really as much a shot on Robyn as it's going to come off as. I understand it's going to come off bad. She's going to be down bad after this. But when Robyn comes into the family, part of the reason why you might assert, if I'm in Robyn's position and I come into a situation like this, and I see that you have 4 other adults that I'm trying to gain control or power over, I very well may assert that the leader, the person who has some semblance of power over these other 3 individuals, a Cody over the OG3, you need to assert your power. Because if I can get him to consolidate all that power within himself, then I only have one person that I have to manipulate from that point moving forward. You
Mm-hmm.
understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So so it might like where you are looking at it like you were kind of saying, I think this is what you're saying, but like
Mm-hmm.
from my view with Christine, you're saying, wow, it's so amazing that she came into the family and she's trying to get us organized and streamlined. So
Mm-hmm.
she's really pushing for us to all kind of fall in line so that we can make the family better. Not
Yeah.
realizing that, yeah, I need you all to fall in line because that way it's easier for me to put you in a box. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Once I get you in line, I can control. If I get, I have control over. If I'm Robyn, I have control over Cody, and if Cody has control over you, I have control over the family.
Yeah.
Like I now control the family, and so
Absolutely.
I
She
can
saw
see
it's
that
like
situation.
looking at the family as like a whole body and everyone has their part and their role to play and it all works together to function. And she wanted Cody up there at the head, but she knew the whole time she was going to be the neck controlling the head.
Right. Or even worse. Like I think she wanted Cody to be the head so she could be the brain. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
there you go.
like,
Probably both.
just right, right. Shut up, Cody. You gonna stop talking. I'm gonna tell you what to think later.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
you know what I mean? 'Cause
right.
that's what I got out of that whole Coyote Pass conversation. Like,
Yep.
what self-respect and chauvinist is gonna be told to be quiet?
Hmm. Yeah,
I'm
Robyn
gonna
didn't
tell
want
you
to
what
come
to
into
think
a
in a minute.
family where there's these other women who have roles of power and authority. That was threatening to
Mhm.
her. That was
Right,
not what she's
right,
used to. She's used to be able to getting her own way, and she can get her own way with Cody. She could really get her own way with Meri too, but she was not going to be able to crack the other two nuts. So the only way to
right,
do
right,
it is to have Cody rise up, and then she therefore goes along with him and controls his rise and what he thinks and says
right.
and does, and then sits back, real quiet,
Yeah,
like she
yeah.
had no influence whatsoever in it all.
I had nothing to do with this, even though my name is on the presentation. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's that weird part. But I think that that's also part of the whole illusion because, like I said, it's the polygamy propaganda program where there's such a desire to make this situation seem like it's feasible, and then on top of that, you have these ladies trying to make it work,
Hmm.
and they can't make it work because everybody is trying something different. Everybody is pulling in different directions. You have Christine trying to pull for the kids. You have Janelle pulling for like the employment. You have Meri pulling for whatever Mary's pulling for, and then you have Janelle or Robyn pulling for herself.
Hmm.
And so it's not. It just and again, like I don't know. Like I think that there's a point where you have to have the conversation because if you look at Robyn's family and how she grew up, and from what I understand about her upbringing, from what I understand, the role that she plays within the Brown family is the same role that her mom played in her family.
Yeah.
And so this is something that she learned in her interpretation of polygamy because there's, was it more than one way to
Skin a
I guess
cat.
fold the box? Yeah, yeah, skin a cat is what I grew up with. I'm trying to make it more than one way to fold a box. I don't know, skin a cat. Yeah, but it's more than one way to skin a cat. And this is her way. Like so, this would have and this makes sense to me that when they were having the courtship conversations, this is why, in my mind, it would be so important to have the wives there for some of that negotiation so that they could have some input as to how the shape of the family would move forward.
Hmm.
So you don't want to have Robyn sitting there making these kind of decisions by herself with Cody because Cody, she's telling Cody what she wants, and Cody's thinking about, I want you.
Hmm.
So anything she wants, he's willing to do. And that
Hmm.
doesn't bode well for the other women.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I can hear those conversations now too, with her saying, I will not speak up when we all get together and talk about this because
right,
that's not going to be good for our family and everyone's going to be against me more and they're already against me. So I have to be quiet during this and you have to be the head and you be the leader and you know what to say, right? You know what? And I won't be backing my other sister wives, but I might look like I'm supporting them or encouraging them or, but that's the roles we're going to play here and we're going to get to where we want to go and we'll be together in the
right,
end. And he's probably like, we're be together in the end. Okay.
Yeah, right. You know what to do, boss.
That's right. Yeah. And it worked for her too. Like you mentioned that she watched Alice, her mother, in this exact same role. Well, Alice was very successful at it. She got
Right.
the man in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he
Yeah,
kind of had both families, but he moved in with Alice and she got him full time and he really claimed and had more kids with Alice. And so, yeah, there you go. So she's like, okay, work for mom. I'll just, same playbook. Why change it up?
And that's actually one of the things too, is that when you look at it, their definitions of successful polygamous relationships don't necessarily correspond with healthy polygamous relationships. Like there might not be any relationship because even with her, Christine talking about her mother and the breakdown of that family, to her, the relationship was perfect. It was amazing. And she didn't understand why the mom would want to leave. Why do you want to leave such an awesome scenario where you have all these other all these all these other people to play with? And the mom was like, I need to be out because I'm losing my mind and I'm losing my sense of self. I don't understand. And when you look at Robyn growing up, this is just how relationships work. And that would also mean, like, that would be indicative of the fact that she would be questioning whether Christine actually had a right to leave. Why are you leaving? Because one woman is supposed to take all of the husband's time. He should only be concerned with one of the wives because it wouldn't make sense that he would be concerned with multiple people. There's only one of him. And one of the things that always kind of bang me up a little bit about Sister Wives is that everybody always seems so reticent to sit around and make excuses for somebody, especially somebody who refuses to take any excuse or reason as to why somebody else might be upset with a particular scenario or situation or circumstance. You know, if something happens with Cody, oh, it's because he's working so hard. He has so many people to deal with. He has all these folks and all these kids to deal with. He has so much on his plate. Christine, who is dealing with the kids, dealing with the problems, dealing with a lot of the household stuff. Oh, you got to do better. What? What?
Yeah, it made no sense. She got the brunt of it all the way through.
Yeah.
Cody made fun of her. He would like make jokes about her right in front of her on the couch, and she'd just laugh him off. And
right.
it is an uncomfortable relationship from the beginning with them.
Yeah, and that even goes back to something that you pointed out too, is that during the time when she was doing these, she was laughing it off and joking off these little indignities and these slight cruelties. She was suffering from not post traumatic stress syndrome. She was spoken from postpartum depression. You know, and so nobody, like, I'm not a real big. If there are people I'm close to, I don't want to sit there and do the whole like we make fun of each other thing. That's never been my cup of tea. It's never been my stilo. But if you're sitting there and you already feel bad about yourself and you're down on yourself, people making fun of you is not the best, course of action.
Especially the person that you quote unquote love the most.
Right. Your best friend.
Yeah.
Your best
Yeah,
friend.
according to her best friend. That's right.
Right. So what did you have? Did you have anything else that you want to talk about as far as the chapter is concerned?
Nope, that's it. That was the end. I just wanted to point out that whole Robyn all of a sudden being the reason why this change is happening, and not for the better, although Christine interpreted it for the better at the beginning, but ended up being not for the better.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the sad part about it, is that it cost her coming into the family. I think it's easy to say that Robyn cost them the family. I don't think it's inaccurate. I don't think it's inaccurate. But I think that I think that they had to focus more on the communication aspect. They had to focus on what the goals and what they were actually trying to achieve. To be honest with you, I think that all of them needed to have like some more maturity before they entered into and agreed to this type of relationship to begin with, so that they can actually discover whether this is something they actually wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of it plays into, like, even with some of the this, when we were talking about like the whole jealousy thing and some of her positions as far as jealousy, that to me strikes more an immature mind, like somebody who really doesn't have a lot of understanding of the way the world works, how
Mm-hmm.
relationships work, and even the security in yourself. That usually you find in more folks who are not necessarily dumb, ignorant. It's just that you don't have that maturity level yet. You just
Yeah.
don't. You haven't hit that peak. You haven't hit that stride yet. So I don't know. I don't know.
They
It's
were these wives were well, especially Christine, and I would say Meri as well. They're just kind of spewing out the information that they were raised with, right? And you can't blame them for that. That's what,
hmm
all kids and teens do. The parents raise you in a certain way that they think is the right way. And because they believe it to be right and true, you want to instill those values or thoughts or principles or whatever it may be onto your children. And so if you have a parent that may have a little bit of a skewed version based
right,
on what the rest of the world thinks, and they're instilling that on their children because they believe it to be right and true, the kids are going to grow up reciting it as well. And so Christine's a classic example of it. She really
hmm
believes it because it's all she knows and what she's been trained and taught. And so she just keeps saying it and trying to apply it. And it really took a long time for her to get to the point where she was making up her own mind. And I think that's because the indoctrination is so strong in that faith. With other kids, they're in high school, and definitely by the time they're in college, they're thinking on their own. They're like,
right,
okay, mom had this political view, dad had this one. Which one do I want? Which one fits with me? And they're trying to do the research and they're trying to figure it all out. Or they just pick one and then they kind of go with it for a while and then decide, well, maybe no, maybe I want to go this way. And they work through it. And I just feel like because the indoctrination is so strong there, and because there's not an encouragement of free thinking and thinking outside the box, this is our box, this is our faith, these are our rules, and we believe it, and we will be happy if we stay in the box. So there's
right,
no
right,
encouragement to use your brain and think outside of it because you're told the happiness is in the box, and outside of the
right,
box will not bring you any happiness or eternal peace or anything else like that. So it took her a long time to get to the point that she would open up the box and look outside the box and realize, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the best thing for
right,
me
right.
after all. It just took her an
Yeah.
extra decade or two than what most people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's something to be said about getting bad advice, like and
Mm,
just trying to stick with bad advice. And I think she was given horrible, horrible, horrible life advice, and she
mm,
tried to stick to it as best she could because that's what she was taught. And
mhm.
I think that this is also one of the things that I always encourage my kids to do is try to get out, like you said, get outside your box so that you
Mhm,
can encounter people of different beliefs,
mhm,
whatever, racial, social strata, whatever the case may be, so that you can
mhm,
encounter that, so that you can meet those people because they have different points of view, perspective, values, etc.
mm,
And it tests by you coming in contact with them. This is where actually Robyn coming into the family and the family doing the show actually, to a degree, may have helped some of the brown kids because it put them in a place where they had their values questioned and they had their morals, their perspectives tested
mm,
with different points of views. And
mhm,
if you believe what you believe, it's solidified because it underwent the gauntlet of having to be vetted against somebody else's opinion, as opposed to you just kind of being in a very segmented, isolated group of folks who everybody believes the exact same thing, and
mm,
they're giving you bad information, but they're telling you that this is how you should live your life in the most ideal sense. And the
mhm,
way they're telling you to live your life isn't realistic, and it's
mhm,
not healthy. Like, it's not healthy for you to ignore how you feel about things. And if Christine is going through this, especially anything with like postpartum depression, if she was suffering from depression in general, or she was having any type of mental illness,
mm,
then this isn't just something that you tell somebody they need to get over it, or
mhm,
jealousy or your concerns are no big deal. you need to stop it. Like, that's not a thing. Like, it's not helping. And if anything, it just makes it worse. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there's that point too.
Yeah. 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 Completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely
But,
agree.
did you have anything else that you want to say about the chapter?
That's it. It was an interesting one. I felt like it had a different rhythm and vibe to it than the other
Yeah.
ones did. And so I found it very interesting. Very excited for Robyn next week.
Yeah.
She's the gift that keeps on giving, so it's got to be good.
Right. Right. Well, you know, she wrote hers, or at least she might not have written it, but she at least had heavy input on how it
Yes.
would come on. And like I said, sometimes have too smart by half that you wind up messing yourself up because you're trying to outthink and trying to
Mm-hmm.
predict what people think. So I'm kind of curious how this is going to turn out. I'm looking
Me
forward to
too.
it.
I
I haven't
predict
read it
there's
yet,
going to be some
but
mudslinging in it. That's my
yeah, yeah,
prediction.
yeah, some
And
little
there's going to
cheap
be a
sheet,
lot
yeah,
of explaining her position and why she's doing the things she's doing. And it's going to be put on a pedestal of holiness. That's my prediction
right.
because that's kind of been
Why
her
everybody
theme.
else is wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
They're
Yep.
treating me horribly.
Yep.
And all I wanted to do
Absolutely.
was take the family over.
Yeah.
I understand what the problem is. I just wanted all the money. Yeah,
So
so
true.
I'm looking forward to it. So, did you have anything coming up this week?
I have our Becoming Sister Wives book read on Thursday night. So that's 7 p.m.
Okay.
Eastern Standard Time. Um, and then there is, hopefully, near the beginning-ish of the week, I'll have another Sister Wives video out, but that's it's really primitive right now. And I've had a really rough week and just a lot of stuff going on in my personal life.
Right.
So the Seeking Sister Wives video is 3/4 of the way done. And my
Okay.
goal is that it gets out tomorrow because then I can say if I can get it out before the next episode would have aired, I can. It's my ultimate goal. So, but it's
Okay.
longer because it was a finale. So it's almost an
Right.
hour long. So it's taking longer to kind of get through it and edit it and, take out unnecessary things and repetitions and that kind of stuff. So I will
Yeah.
get to that very soon. How about you, James?
Okay. Well, tomorrow. I have the Sister Lives with Amanda and Sarah.
Mhm.
But I was doing that the My Take Comedy Club, and I've been writing jokes for that thing. Because that I had to break Seeking Sister Wives down because there's so much information that's
Yeah.
in it. So I think it's gonna. I've been working on that heavy, and so I have to release some. I'm gonna have to take a break from it for a little bit, release some videos during the course of the week. So look for those, and
Mhm.
then I'm gonna have. I gotta get that. At least the comedy thing, maybe like a little shortened version of it. But
Yeah.
it's just so much information. And then I also want to kind of get beefed up so that way when the next season starts for Sister Wives, I'll be able to have some tell some jokes about that because I know this is going to be a rough one. It's going to be a
Yeah,
rough season.
yeah, for sure. I
Yeah,
have to tell you, I am so excited for that, James. I can't wait until you
yeah,
have that comedy thing come out. I'm waiting with bated breath. It's
yeah.
really,
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, it's
It's
gonna
been
be
a minute
good.
since I've been on stage to do it, but it's fun. Like for those who don't know, I did some stand up for a little bit. I was traveling doing some stand up here and there. So yeah, trying to dust off the old chops. We'll see
It's
how it
gonna be
goes.
awesome. You have
Right?
Amanda that you can use as a consultant too if you need to run a joke by her or have her,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
help me with the timing on this.
You know the messed up part about it, like Quiet just kept a little inside baseball. For those who care. But just when you're doing like comedy is such uh a crowd it's such a reciprocal thing. Like so if you're doing like you go to a comedy club and you're standing on stage and you can feel the audience. It just feels
Mhm.
different. As opposed to doing it online where you're just kind of in your studio and you're telling jokes into a camera and you're not quite sure how it works or how it fits or you don't really feel the audience and it's like that in movies too. Like you put something out and you don't find out if people like it until like months later, as
Yeah.
opposed to doing theater where you're on stage. The audience laughs when you tell a joke, or they
Yeah.
don't laugh.
Right.
you know, you know where they're at. So we'll see. We'll see.
That's
Either way, it'll
exciting.
come out.
You have a
All right.
colorful life, James.
I'm Cody crazy, and I will say that. Just in closing, like one of the things that I do, since I'll try to give a positive spin on the life of Cody Brown, Cody Wynn Brown. One of the things that I will give him credit for is his willingness to try new things and, if necessary, move to different places. Like I think that that's something that like a lot of us kind of overlook because he does it in such a haphazard, careless way. But
Hmm.
I give him a lot of credit because it takes a lot of courage for you to like quit a job and then try another job or leave a state and move to another state. Hell, move to a different part of town sometimes
Hmm.
can be difficult, but this guy will move states.
Yeah.
So I'll give him credit on that. Like, I think that's very brave.
Yeah.
Crazy as hell the way he does it. Like, I couldn't just, next week we move, y'all, we selling the house,
Yeah.
or even worse, we're going to leave the house that we've been paying for. We're going to put money down on a new house without even getting a sign up on the house that we're living in.
Right.
That's like super daredevil crazy to me.
Yeah.
That's crazy as
Yeah.
hell.
He can
I
definitely
would
go out
be
on a limb.
insane.
And
Right.
I
I
think
was like,
even
what's my
the
next
sister wives, yeah, the sister wives at one point said that like life is not boring with Cody. Like you can
right,
never say there is a boring day because you don't know what's coming from right or left field. Of course, that's also a sign of a narcissist, but still,
right, right,
you don't know where it's coming from and what's going to happen. And as you said, he is always up to a challenge, and he's not scared to
right,
try new things. So there are positive things we can say about Cody Brown, and he looked
right.
halfway
I'll
decent
give him that.
before he had the spaghetti noodle hair.
Right,
There
right.
you go.
Well, what? I think it's the because aside from the hair, I think it's just that a lot of his life is weighing on him.
Mm,
Like a lot of life decisions are weighing on him heavy because you're trying to like you make these crazy decisions
hmm.
and you have to deal with the repercussions of those decisions, and
Hmm.
it weighs on you different.
Yeah.
Especially when and this is just my personal perspective as far as karma is concerned, that when you play people dirty, a lot of that comes back on you and weighs on you heavier. Like
Hmm.
so you're trying a lot of slick stuff, you're trying to take advantage of people, and it just like that inward nastiness a lot of times starts to make itself more pronounced in your outward appearance. And I
Mm.
think that that's what's happening because you see these ladies, they leave these relationships, these toxic relationships. All of a sudden, it look like they drop, they dropped a couple pounds. Look like they dropped about 5 years too. Like it
Hmm.
look like they turned the time machine back on.
Hmm.
They're going backwards. So
Yeah, they look better than they did at the beginning of Sister Wives. Like they
right,
really do
right,
look amazing. They do. Yeah.
right. Yeah, they look happier and like
Yeah.
it's just they seem lighter, they seem
Hmm.
happier, they seem more content with themselves, more secure in themselves.
Yeah.
And confidence is always attractive. So
Hmm.
yeah, and Cody, he looked like his world is shook. Robyn looked like her world is shook.
Yeah,
I guess
they
they
do.
trying to figure out how
They've
to pay these
aged a
bills.
decade. They have.
Right,
I think Meri had the biggest glow up because I always felt like she was just dowdy and depressed and whiny and like in that whole disposition. She just seemed miserable all the time. And I think she was. She had like the weight of the world. She had Cody not loving her anymore. She had the jealousy with Robyn, but yet that's her best friend. And like she just, and then the whole catfishing thing and the embarrassment of it all when it gets out public.
mm-hmm.
And I think she really, really, really struggled. And now I feel like the difference is the grandest in
Right,
hers in terms of her laughing and being lighter and joking around and like it's just a side of Meri we never saw early on in
right.
Sister Wives. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Well, because I agree with that. I think she suffered. Mary suffered a lot of indignities,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning. And I think
Mhm.
that might have been Cody's way of giving her like the extracting his pound of flesh for
Mhm.
what he perceived to be like any type of indignities that he may have suffered, any
Mhm.
slights that he thought she might have bestowed upon him. He was trying to make her suffer through that as
Yeah.
well. So I
Yeah.
can see that.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody said something. Where was it raspberry? I would argue if Cody is a narcissist, it isn't weighing on him. For example, his comment, "I hope Meri finds happiness because I will."
Mm.
Well, I think that the one thing with narcissists, because it's not necessarily that he feels bad that he did them wrong, as much as if he does have narcissism, narcissistic disorder, he would feel bad because his life isn't working the way he wants his life to work out.
Mhm.
So if he does these things to her because all of a sudden he can't pay all his bills and he's not making money like he should, and these women aren't
Mhm.
giving him the money he thinks he deserves, yeah,
Mhm.
he's going to be pissed. You know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, a big shout out to Lizzie B with $10 super chat.
Thank you,
Make
Lizzie
sure
B.
your notifications are on for videos, live streams. My Take on Reality. Subscribe to Senior Perspective on Sister Wives, and happy Sunday.
Yes,
All right, thank you,
Lizzie.
Lizzie.
Thank you for that, Lizzie.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for everybody. And again, once again, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. The
Yeah.
chat is always, per usual, been
Mhm.
awesome. I appreciate you guys keeping it positive, light, and fun in the chat, not sitting there figuring and arguing. Because again, like I said, YouTube should be a place you go to relax, not a place you go to get frustrated. That's
Yes.
what work is for. Then also, also, I want to make sure we give a big shout out to the moderators holding us down, making sure that everything flows properly in the chat. Because, in case
Yeah.
you guys didn't know, it's very difficult to have conversations and pay attention to what's going on in the chat. I try my
Yeah, it
best
is.
to peruse every now and again, but
Yeah.
it's really the moderators hold it down. So I want to thank
Yeah.
them. Again, Lizzie B, Rochelle J, Lynn Skinner.
Mhm.
You had another person too, didn't you?
Did she jump in? I don't know. I didn't see her if she did. If there was somebody else who
Oh, okay.
jumped in. I
Yeah.
think I
So
think it
Lynn
was just
Skinner, hold
Lynn.
it
I
down
think
for everybody.
Lynn was holding down the fort here today on my end.
Right. Yeah, pushing them out. Yeah, but thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. I appreciate it. See you next Sunday. Next Sunday, I'm sure it's gonna be crazy because we talk about the Queen, Queen Domega. So, and I know Robyn is gonna have some craziness coming out. Like,
Mhm.
I was the greatest thing that ever happened to the Brown family. They're lucky to have me. Thank you very
Right,
much. So
right.
I know it's gonna be like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
make sure you come in and check us out. We'll be back on Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, God willing. Uh,
Mhm.
Thanks so much for hanging out. I'm James
And
with
I'm
My
Jenny.
Take on Reality.
Oh,
And
I stepped on your line.
that's okay. We'll do it again. I'm
Okay.
James from My Take on Reality.
And I'm Jenny from Senior Perspective.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. That's our takes. And we out.
We're out.
Thank you guys again. Appreciate you. I'm trying to find a button. All right. Have a good one.